law to karate. I bust you down like Itachi, cause you legit and Hachi. Straight kamikaze, I'm talking to bodies as I go straight brawly. Y'all niggas can hardly be me, I'm not part of the sea. I'm part of the sea like Moses. No psychosis or hocus pocus. I put in poems to stay focused. Ignore all the BS on my timeline. I throw a lifeline for those thinking I ain't about mine. Hit you upside your head with a tie iron. Can't be your time if it's my time. The set to be patient, I'm patiently waiting. It's driving me crazy, cause lately the ops that I'm facing is basic and basically tragically hating. Anticipating my fall, they want it all for themselves. So I make the call, no need to stall. I go and get them all off of the shelf. I take affirmative action, I'm blasting and laughing of how you reacting to my satisfaction of cashing injections and Benjis and Wilsons. The life that you always imagined. Brother from the goal, yeah. If you ever see him go, it's Holocaust or Holy Ghost. Overcome or overflow, yeah. Either way it's overdose. Watch you walk or comatose, penetrating to your soul, yeah. Tit for tat and toe for toe, pound for pound and blow for blow. You would never see me fold, nah. Claiming that what you don't know, that is how you get exposed. Left it there with bullet holes.
Promise to leave it alone, promises all day.
We going up, shit going down. We lighting them up, you best hit the ground. Shooting them up, one after round. When there's blood in the air, you better not dare to come around town. Father, please forgive me, have mercy on my soul. Fools keep trying to test me and I will never fold. It's the way that Wendy raised me, the city of the gold. Load them up and let them go, load them up and let them go, load them up and let them fly.
Every time, gets me every time. You already know what it is. It's Il Divino Vega. We're coming live from the Chop Shop. And I have a guest with me that I'm just so happy and glad we were able to finally get together and do this. So without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and bring him in because I know we're about to get into some good discussion. This is the kind of guest we definitely want to have here on the Chop Shop. Without further ado, Millennial Mike, what's up, bro?
Hey.
What is going on?
Glad to be here. Everybody would be so thrilled to hear what we talked about before we started recording. But, let's try to bring some of that energy.
Right.
Also, that opening was fire. It was fire, man.
Appreciate you.
Good advertisement.
Yeah, I try. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying. Yo, shout out Fizz on 222. Head Bob, you know what it
yes.
is,
I'm doing that right now. I'm going crazy right now. You can't see me. Oh, you can see my little Mickey Mouse avatar, but that's ironic, guys. That's ironic.
If
you know me, it's ironic.
Disney World or something?
Okay, dude. I was at this little podunk escape room, and they said, and they pulled this big box up with these like random like hats and like things to put on your head, like scarves, like all these things you could like wear. And you put one on, you find one, you put one on, and then you go to the little escape room. You know escape rooms, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So this is actually a photo with my entire family. Is here. Of course, I cropped myself out, but I basically found the Mickey Mouse ears, and I put on the most like blank face, the most like not impressed blank face I could possibly do.
Go ahead and
you didn't have to do all that.
Just want people to get a good visual of it,
Mm-hmm. You kind of got like, I'm not sure if it's a blank face or if it's kind of like a smirk. It's kind of like, huh? Right. I know something that you don't.
right.
Well, it was fun. It was good times.
I don't know. I mean, it looked like it. It looked like you're having a good time.
Oh man. Well, if that's the interpretation, I'm happy.
Oh, bro, how you been though, man? How's everything going?
Great, man. I just I'm going to school, so I moved hour outside of where I was to a new place, and I'm gonna be going to school this August for plumbing. So that's been really exciting. So something new. I've always been doing kind of your more customer service stuff, and for the longest time, and now I'm trying to turn a new chapter. So that's the biggest thing that's going on right now. That's part of the reason why I don't have my camera on, because my place is not camera ready.
Hey.
It's pretty messy right now, but I'm so happy you had me on regardless.
No, for sure, bro, for sure. I honestly, when you said you were available, I was like, was excited, bro. I was really excited for because, like, again, I just know from previous like conversations we've had, from back in the day when we were doing the roundtables, to even like when I had the chance of getting onto the Exiles Network to discuss films. Like I told you earlier, like your takes, your analysis on things was just always like on another level. To like obviously where I myself didn't look at things that way. Like I feel like there's like basic, right? Like so there's like basic viewership, like analysis, right? And then there's like slightly above that, like the people that just have more thought into things. That's where I am at. And then I just feel like you were like like professional level, like you really break things down. And I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that, but I appreciate it. I do. I'm glad that my when we had a lot of episodes, so I'm glad that
Yeah.
we were entertaining people.
No, you guys were, man. Honestly, like it was I
All 2 hours, 3 hours of those podcasts.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you were in it for the long haul if you were watching for sure. But it was a good time. It was always a good time, man. And like I said, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from just like those times that we did talk and then just even tuning in, you know what I'm saying? So and man, honestly, it's like even when I was like, I was thinking to myself, like, man, like even like have the roundtable talk we would have, or you know what I also do, not the roundtable talks, but were they like the verses? I don't remember the verses Magic
Yeah,
used to do,
I do remember that. Yes,
and that I thought was fun. I thought that was a cool thing we were doing back then.
that was the RTSC.
Yes,
They were doing that. Yeah, that
yep,
was really fun. Yeah, it
that
was
was really
basically like a
fun, man.
debate. Yeah, a
Yeah,
debate.
it was, then
I love playing devil's advocate. So
yes, exactly. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I loved about it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
like it was like things that we agree on these things, but like for the sake of just like arguing, not arguing, but debating, we're gonna
yeah.
go ahead and even take positions that we probably wouldn't take naturally. You know what I'm saying? So I thought that was fun. That was really fun. It
Yeah.
was good sparring sessions.
Oh yeah.
I still think Manu took my victory from me when I went up against what's his name, man, I forget his name right now. It's eluding me. Xavier, Xander, Xander's
Oh
own.
yeah, yeah.
I forgot his actual name, but I just remember his tag. His tag was Xander's own.
I remember some people got roasted, and it's like, dude, I don't think his points were better. I think he just roasted the other guy.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't actually say anything about the show or the movie. He just roasted it.
Yeah, he did. He definitely did, bro. Oh, that shit was so hilarious, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, good times, dude. Man, like I don't know if I want to get into this part of the discussion just yet, but I guess I would say like,
The gorilla.
yeah, yeah. We're gonna talk about debates. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about debates. Where do you stand? Where do you stand on the 100 men versus a gorilla? What's your take on that?
Okay, so this is the philosophy of the 100-man versus the gorilla.
Mm,
If you are for the gorilla, then you're a nihilist.
mm,
If you're for the men, then you are an optimist, essentially,
mm.
or even more deeper than that. It's like, even though, see, the interesting thing about this is that this is a very online debate.
Yes.
Okay, and what it exemplifies is the fact that there is so much information online that we're like in a post-truth society,
Right.
and there's so much information that you can find to affirm, to justify pretty much anything. So when you're talking about this, you have like these scientists come on, but you think that would end the conversation, but it doesn't. It's like,
Right.
because there's other facts that say like, oh well, humans they have like more stamina or something like that, or like, oh, how did you think that like people in like olden days killed big animals or whatever. It's like,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
how do you think that happened, right? And then people are going back and forth with like all things that could sound completely legitimate,
Hmm.
but what's greater than see, like if we were in a situation where we all just kind of trusted the science, for instance,
right.
then this would be over. This couldn't exist. But because we live in, especially online, in the online realm, we live in this era where, you know, you can find information for both sides.
Yeah,
What
you
it
can.
does is it actually allows you to see what kind of person you are. Like, what information did you find? Why did you gravitate toward that information? Like, there's a whole another thing that opens up. So you'll find
Right.
people who don't have any faith in themselves. They're not really aware of their own capabilities. They're kind of just like a little bit, they don't have very much hope for humanity in general, and that kind of typically reflects in the idea that, oh, of course the men would completely lose. Like,
Right.
there's not even a question. But then
Right.
the few people who are like, oh yeah, like the men, you know, they could do it, we could do it, like, here's the reasons why I believe we could do it, they're a little more optimistic. They're like, yeah, like we can conquer, we can defeat anything in our way. Like, the indomitable human spirit is a real thing. Now,
Right.
personally, you know, I think that the gorilla is funnier. Like, the gorilla winning is funnier because it's just like,
It is funnier.
it's funnier. But
Well, so it's actually this is interesting, right? So, man, I'm glad we're actually talking about this in this manner, because as silly as it seemed, the question, because it is somewhat of a silly question, but you
but is
pointed
it
out,
though?
yeah, but is it though? Right? Because, and what you're pointing out is actually kind of what I was looking at, you know, when I was watching this, you know, like, and even engaging in the conversation myself. And it's funny because you're right. Me being a participant in this engagement, right? And this was when I first came across it, it was with like two coworkers, right? One coworker was the optimist, the other one was the nihilist, right? And then here I am, and I'm more of the curious guy, you know, like, I'm like, I mean, well, what are we talking about here? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, do they have weapons? You know, I'm trying to more so like make it make sense. You know what I
But
mean?
if
Like,
you didn't, but this is the thing though, imagine those are all very natural and intuitive questions that you just asked. But imagine not even asking those questions in favor of the humans. Like, you're
yeah,
a
no,
human.
that's what I mean.
You're not a gorilla. It's like, why wouldn't you ask what chances I have? It's like,
That's
you just, oh, I lost.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
I had that one coworker who was just for sure like, dude, 100 men are gonna win. You like, you know, it wasn't even about the information. It's just that's where he stood, you know. And then it was the other guy who was just like, dude, it's a gorilla, bro. It's a gorilla. And then I'm not even in the conversation just yet. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? You know,
Yeah.
I'm coming in just the third wheel into the conversation.
Sure.
And then they're like, hey, Vega, like 100 men are a gorilla. And I'm like, do they have weapons? You know,
Yeah.
like, I'm now asking questions, and then he's like, no weapons. I'm like, ooh, okay, that changes things. I'm like, okay, where are they? Are they in the jungle or something? What environment are they in? Because even if they came in with no weapons, men can create weapons. You know what I'm saying? And we'll use sticks, we'll use whatever we need to survive. And then he saw like, and then he kept moving the goalpost, like making it harder. You know, like,
You're
no,
in a
bro,
flat arena.
Yeah, they're in an arena. They're in an open field, bro. In a football field, nothing nearby. Just 100 men and a gorilla. And then I'm like, do they have a choice? You know what I'm saying? Do they have a choice here? You know, like, no sane person is gonna face off a gorilla. You know, I'm like,
yeah.
So, and then he's like, no, they have to be. This is the only way they can live on. And I'm like, okay, well, that actually changes it in their favor, because if this is the only way they can live,
they're gonna do everything they possibly can. They're gonna, like,
you know what I mean? And then I'm like, so, you know, and I'm like, so and I was even using percentages. Like, I think now they have like a whatever this percent chance, whatever. And then I'm like, hold on. Let's dig deeper. I'm like, what's the heaviest? What's the heaviest a gorilla can lift? And then what's the heaviest a human can lift? And you know, and then I was like, all right, are these men physically fit? Whatever, like asking all these questions. At the end of it, I'm like, bro, like, honestly, like 100 men wouldn't all survive. I'm like, I think there'd be some deaths, some casualties, but I think they take it, man. And then I'm like, because according to the weight, I'm like, and here's the thing: it says that a gorilla can weigh this, can lift this much. That's probably with two hands. You take away, you know, you 5 men go on this hand, 5 men. I'm like
Yeah.
trying to like break down the science of it all,
Yeah.
And then at the end of it all, like I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? I'm like, ask AI. What does AI have to say about this? Ask ChatGPT. And then literally ChatGPT's answer was the same answer I gave, and that's that. It would be many casualties, some deaths, but 100 men can defeat a gorilla or silverback gorilla, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you see, hey, Chat, and then even after that, like this kind of goes to your point, like even after you get somewhat of an answer that should end the argument, right, or the debate, even after that, the guy who was like so pro gorilla, he was all like, nah, bro, like how do we even know what a gorilla can live? How do we even know that, bro?
Yeah.
And then he started like asking ChatGPT other things. Can we really know how much a gorilla lives?
Yeah.
And then ChatGPT gives like, well, we can't really know, but we don't really know the exact limit, but according to what's been recorded, this will, whatever, like all this stuff,
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you don't think she thought about that question when she answered the first question? Like the AI thinks about everything. They're grabbing all information out there in the, out there in the universe. You know what I'm saying? And they came up with the answer they came up with. But all that to say that, like, they're in that dynamic of just that engagement. It was the guy who was the nihilist was like, he's just so on the gorilla side, like, oh, the gorilla will win. And then another guy who was like, again, without really asking questions, he just thought 100 men would win because in his mind, it's numbers win. And then I was the guy who came in and I'm like, let's find more information. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's really break this down. I need to know more, whatever. And then I was like, look, dude, if 5 guys, if even 10 guys, whatever, just whatever. And then I'm like, and one guy, all it takes is one guy to sacrifice himself, right? And I was like, all it takes is one guy to say, for the greater good, I'm gonna just go in there and shove my arm in this gorilla's throat and let him choke on my arm, even if I lose it.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the metal stuff you see like in an anime or something like
that.
Yeah,
exactly.
But the thing is that I will amend my statement. I call the pro gorilla the nihilist. Maybe that's a little unfair, although I did say it for a reason. But what I will say is that there is on both sides a tendency to project on the human, right?
Yeah.
So if you're scared and you don't think that you are worth anything, you're just a statistic amongst 100 people, and you're not like a powerful human made in the image of God himself,
Right.
And you're gonna be like, okay, well, yeah, the gorilla is just gonna like turn me into a greasy smear on the pavement or whatever, right? But if you feel like there is a chance, and I'm gonna like fight for that chance, then that kind of just tells you where your mind is. So
right,
yeah, it's really interesting.
No, sure. It really is. And that's actually funny you brought up even the God part, because I was like, bro, like, are these? That was like one of my questions. Like when I said, what kind of men are these? Like, when I was like, are they strong? Whatever. And I was like, well, are they 100 godly men? Because if they're godly men, and then God intervenes, because we've seen it in the Bible.
Yeah. It's like the last 100 men on earth. It's like, yeah. It's like all humanity will not die.
Yeah. So it's just it was just funny to like break these things down.
Deus ex machina.
Yeah, exactly. Which arm? Dominant arm? I'm gonna keep my dominant arm. I'd probably go in there with my left. You know what I'm saying? And sacrifice my left arm. I mean, truth is so the way I see it is like we'd all have to tackle this guy down, right? Like we all have to like try and run in there and bring him down, and then one guy has to say, all right, my arm is gonna go just straight down his throat. You know what I'm saying? I want to see him chew on this. Oh man, but yeah, dude, it was definitely a fun experiment. You know what I'm saying? So so to speak, like just to see, like you're right, like just to see how people thought about these things, how they break it down, where their thoughts, how they form their thoughts to this.
Did you hear any takes that were like really odd or very unique? Like, because I heard a lot of the same kinds of things, but sometimes they were funny. Like some people would put a certain take in a funnier way. Like, oh, like this is how the gorilla would win, or like this is how the men would be screaming as they flew across this like they would do it. They'd say like all these funny things, but I haven't actually heard like a really unique take, but maybe I wasn't looking hard enough. But yeah.
So when you say unique take, you mean like, I mean, because like I came across a few, but the majority of it was just comedic.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because again, at face value, that's what people see, right? It's a funny question. Like it goes back to what I said earlier. Like at face value, certain things just come off as what it looks like and on the surface.
Yeah.
But it's what you looked at that's deeper, right? Like what's the deeper? What are the underlying truths here that we're actually discussing? You know, and or how it's being discussed, right? Because at face value, yeah, it's a silly question. Like who in the right mind is going to face off a gorilla? You know what I'm saying? Like unless you actually have to. And so a lot of it was just comedic, you know. The videos were hilarious. I love seeing the videos. You know, it was always
the game, like the simulator where they like it's so funny.
You just see like a bunch of bodies flying. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so, it was funny. And then even like amongst the coworkers, I had this discussion. It was like, you know, he would even share like, you see, you know, like whenever it's like a video of a gorilla just, you know, pounding the crap out of like all these guys. He's like, I told you, bro. I'm like, bro, that's simulator. It's a simulator. Like you can technically put it that the gorilla's weak as hell and the men are strong and the men would win, you know.
I saw some animations too.
Man.
There's this one guy, he got chopped in half, and then the last guy was there facing off against the gorilla, and he was about to get killed. But the guy who got chopped in half, the 99th guy, he got up and he dragged himself behind the gorilla and squeezed the gorilla's balls, and then the gorilla fell down, and then he died, and then the last guy won because the 99th guy sacrificed his last bit of energy to crush the gorilla's balls. Hilarious. Way funnier when you watch the video though. And the music they had.
No, for sure. Cody said, "Yo, Mike, I think I saw that one.
Hilarious."
Yeah, I don't think I saw the one. I gotta see if I can find it. He says, like, what if the survivors against the gorilla gets free rent for life as aspiration?
Yeah, it's like
yeah. Dude, you know how many? Yeah, there you go. That was something I kept saying. I'm like, there has to be like a stipulation here, like some sort of or not a stipulation, but like why are these guys fighting a gorilla? You know what I'm saying? Like, so even like the
motivation does matter.
Motivation matters.
Yeah.
It matters. You know what I'm saying? Because if I don't have to fight this guy, I'm not going to. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like even like I was like, what are they, like 100 prisoners on death row that are, you know, like if they can beat this gorilla, they don't die. You know what I'm saying? Like
they get free. Yeah.
Yeah, they get free. Yeah, you know. So.
But then that brings a whole bunch of philosophical thoughts into it too, because it's like if you're on death row and you're going to be freed, where are you going to go back to? It's like.
Yep.
I love those kinds of stories, but that's way off track. That's like that's what it's like 100 Man versus Gorilla, movie number 2.
Yeah. Right.
The sequel.
Right. I just don't show them the movie. The movie Congo. Oh, dude, that's what. It's funny too, because like I saw like some again these guys just put together these comedic videos where it's like. You see them in a gorilla suit, and he's like somehow he knows how to box, and the gorilla knows how to box, and it's so silly, dude. Oh, look, it made for great conversation. That's for sure. That's for sure.
There'll be more. The internet generates these things infinitely. There's never an end.
And yeah, that's a fact. Like even what was that? What did I seen recently? It was like you. I think it was even like somebody was already posing like what about 100 women? Like it was like somebody was already trying to
100 women versus a bear.
Yeah.
Do you remember the man or the bear meme?
Oh yeah.
It's like, hey, now you all get to choose the bear.
Right. You know what's funny about that too? The funny thing about that too is that I brought up the bear during the gorilla discussion. I'm like, bro, why are we even talking about a gorilla? Like, put a bear in there and it wins everything, bro. You know, like,
dude, I was trying so hard to get Grok to have a man and a woman back to back with their fists up, a bear on one side and a gorilla on the other. The woman was going against the gorilla, the man was going against the bear, and it was like, it's like. Instead of like Battle of the Sexes, it was going to be like men and women unite over one thing. It's like, It's like bringing men and women back together again, something like that.
He said, "What could be messed up and game changer is how old is the bear? That matters too. That does matter
Like
too.
a baby bear.
Yeah, it's like a cub. It's just a
That's
cub
messed
bear.
up.
Damn. Sorry, cub. You're going down. Not even actually at that age. You probably could like
Round
maybe do
2, mama
something.
bear.
Yeah, right.
Here comes a new challenger.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. You know what's crazy though is like even seeing these videos of like people who own bears, you know what I'm saying, that have like a bear in their home that they feed. It's like they're just like hugging around, playing with it. It's like, what in the world is going on? You know?
It's like Joker. It's like the one bad day.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it takes is one bad day, bro. You're gonna wish you never thought to yourself, I can domesticate a wild animal. Oh man, it's like it's kind of cool at the same time. You know, I can completely knock it. It's like, oh, that's kind of dope, you know. But I know I wouldn't do it.
It's like that dude posting their W's Twitter account.
Oh,
have you seen that Twitter account? Dudes posting their W's.
No.
I'll just look it up. It's just like guys posting them succeeding at various things. It's very wholesome and it's cool usually. But that's definitely something you would see on there, like a dude like with a pet bear, like riding it or something.
Oh, there we go. Look at that. It's like Grok is listening to us. Dudes posting their W's. Oh, look at this.
So I'm sure you've talked about AI because you've mentioned AI just a few times in this conversation. So I'm sure you've had that discussion.
I actually, here's the thing. I haven't. So it's actually interesting because like not many people, I guess, you know, I don't know if I don't want to say not many people. The guests I've had on, it's just our conversations are more so far have been specific, you know.
AI is not specific.
You know, yeah, you would think it would be, but it just hasn't been to that degree. Like, so I've brushed over it, like in the sense of like, or I've touched on it with some discussions, depending on how it affects like what we're talking about. So, like, let's just say I have an artist on, like another music artist, and then it's like, so then our conversation becomes that, like, you know, how, you know, AI's influence in music, right? Or it's, you know, I've had so yes, I have. I'll put it like that. I have. I don't. It hasn't been it wasn't the, how do you say, the center of the conversation. It was a part of the conversation. So like even if it was like about movies, I had a guest on one time that we talked about movies, and then he was speaking on the influence of AI there, right, in the movie industry, and then what the future could look like with that, and then you know, and then so forth and so forth, like, you know, other people that use it to help them create whether it's like, you know, posters, arts, you know, things of that nature. And then I think even just yesterday, he said this conversation just revealed to me why Tekken has a bear character as a fighter. Right. Exactly. That was actually one of my favorite characters in Tekken. But
the bear was like he was named Kuma, right?
Yeah, Kuma. Yeah, exactly. And then they eventually added Panda or something like that.
Yeah.
He has a panda. But yeah, even yesterday though, we did slightly touch on it because I was telling Carlos how I was watching Terminator, right? Terminator 1, bro, 1988. And they, in the movie, bro, they, in a sense, prophesy the age in which AI was going to peak and change the world, right? In the movie that came out in 1988, and, you know, in that movie, I don't know if you remember, I don't know how long ago it's been since you watched it, bro.
It's been a minute, yeah.
Reese, you know, the guy who comes back from the future to protect Sarah Connor, she's asking him like what happens in the future, and this is what he literally what he says is, in between the years 2021 and 2027, AI and cybernetics and robotics, whatever, like massively like revolutionized, and changed the world forever, and things just then went south, you know, you know, and this is me paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but just hearing that in the movie, I'm like, that is crazy, considering that we are literally within that time frame, and AI for sure has like advanced drastically, very like so much more than from what it was, a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
And then on top of that, then considering even cybernetics and robotics as well. So yeah, I was for sure kind of like, that is insane. Like,
Well, what are your thoughts? Your most broad philosophical, ethical thoughts on AI as a concept, and less so on the specific occurrences and like this AI, that AI, specific uses. Like, do you have any sort of, or is it all just a case by case basis kind of thing? Would you say?
For me, it's case by case basis, because it's obvious that it can be used as a tool. That's the obvious part, right? Like I've used AI to help create even some certain like art covers for me, for some of my singles. So it can be used as a tool for sure. The As deep as I've thought about it is more like it's more like how will it change society as we know it, right? Like the workforce and things of that nature. How we go forward. And that's like considering AI and robotics, right? Because there's already robotic factories that exist that have technically put people out of jobs, right? And then AI do the same now, and even the creative space. When we're talking about just artists and things like that nature, it stands to me to think that it can never really fully replace that. And honestly, I'm not even certain. To a certain degree, it probably is even the same on the robotic side, but at least for sure, as AI is concerned, we're not at a point where AI has, I guess, consciousness. You know what I mean? Like, at least not as intricate, or not as complex as our own. You know what I mean? As deep as we go with it. What I will say is philosophically looking at it, what I can say is I guess it maybe stands to me that, and this is not a shot at anybody, you know what I'm saying? But what I will say is just observing humanity, it almost seems like we're losing that, like how deep we think about things.
Losing what?
Consciousness, like not consciousness, no, not consciousness. What's the word I'm looking for? More like
Like, do you mean like free will, agency?
There you go. Like free will, agency, even empathy for that matter. Like how deep we use, it seems like we're losing that. Like people are just becoming more numb and more just losing agency, because it's more like lack of like responsibility. There's this thought that lack of responsibility brings about more like less hardship. So it's like the more the more the government can do for me, the better type thing. That kind of concept. To the point where again, even like as far as empathy is concerned, the failure to see the entirety of how one thing can affect many parts from many different angles, and it's like people are very much like one-sided on things, you know what I'm saying? Like not understanding under the complexity of things, which makes it that AI can at some point be better than human beings because of that factor, because it's maybe able to think further than most humans can now think, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I have questions. I don't have a lot of answers for you, so I apologize about that. But so we talk we talk a lot about we talked about a lot of things. So let me like kind of rewind a little bit. So you were talking about AI being a tool, okay? So when does a tool no longer become a tool, or can it?
I mean, no, yeah, that's a fact. I mean, so that's anything, right? Like even the most basic tools, right? Like, so like for instance, the hammer is a tool, but it could also be a weapon. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It could be used for something bad. So I think from that aspect is what I'm referring to when I say it can be used as a tool, but it's obvious that it can also be used as a weapon, right? So what I mean by that is it's obvious now to this point that AI has been used to smear people's character. It's been used to put false narratives out there. You know, it's used to, even at this point, like I was just telling Carlos yesterday, like there's certain cases now, like, and I think even one that was even more public because it was a celebrity, where it was like, I think Taylor Swift was like trying to sue or take down something that of an AI fake that was made about her in a pornographic fashion. That's when it's no longer a tool, you know, because it's being used to hurt people rather than build something.
BVS, Batman, 1% chance. Do you believe it or no?
That's interesting. Yeah, no. So there you go. There's definitely room for that, and I'm open to that idea, right? Like, you know, that's the whole, like, you know, almost like, if something wasn't intended for bad but can be bad, do you still put it out there, right? It's the
well, right, but like not even that. Like,
Mhm.
see, the 1% chance is okay. If there's a 1% chance that the world will end, we have to stop it. It's not a 1% chance that I might stub my toe. It's right. It's a 1% chance that it's all over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing about AI is that it is very unique in the sense that it changes, just like Superman, our view on reality. Okay, even when it's not powerful, because for instance, the existence of AI itself allows for people to believe that someone that is not human can have human-like agendas, attention, and whatnot, which, but without any of the accountability. So what this means is that, I mean, this is just one example, that someone could do anything that they wanted, feigning as being an AI, and get away with all of it because people have already fully accepted the idea that AI exists. AI can do a lot of different things, and it's managed by many people, too many to even be able to fully comprehend or to hold accountable. And we don't know how to do it yet, and we probably never will. And that's okay because AI can make really cool photos and stuff, right? So most people, even your most average person, like I live in a small Midwestern town in Missouri, right? I went to a restaurant one time and I saw AI photos on the wall, right? I've seen AI photos on people's walls in their homes, like we're doing my work. And these are people who don't really have any ethical or like they have no deeper thoughts about it other than what it does for them. But it's already very prevalent, and the idea that AI exists and can help them, and they don't really care about the consequences, is so widespread that like it only the kind of people who are going to even question it are going to be a very minute amount of people. So it's interesting how it completely changes the way we frame things. Like it divests human beings of accountability.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Even when it's not powerful.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. I mean, well, you said you had questions, but that seemed like a very much like a thought on the matter. But
well, it's a thing. It's not a conclusion. It's just a thing.
It's a thought. No, it's a thought. It's a very how do you say? It's actually a very strong thought in the sense that you're making a valid point there. It's not.
So what should be done about, like, what can be done about that?
That's
when should it be done?
Yeah. See, it's so I think this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Like, this is where, like, all right, let's look at reality here, right? Like, will it end? Will the powers that be that work on these things, do they stop? Right? So for instance, and so it's interesting we're talking about this. And again, funny thing is that again, somehow watching Terminator, and there's a slight discussion on this, like in that movie, like where they where Sarah, and this was in part 2 actually, where they figure if we, or she thinks to herself, if I eliminate the guy who creates it, I can, whatever, change the outcome. But anyways, that's not important. What's important is something that the movie poses, right? And it's not that it's necessarily the same thing, but I can see why in the movie they correlate the two, because there is some slight similarity, and this is what she poses.
Between what two things?
Right. I'm about to drop it on you right now. That's that. She poses that this man's creation of AI is equivalent to the creation of nuclear power, right? Where she in the movie, it's a bit more cynical, but I'm not going to go there. But to me, I can see that what I just stated is really what the comparison is, right? Is that nuclear power could be used for good, right? And if the world wasn't so, I guess, in human nature, I guess, corrupt, or not even just corrupt, but just imperfect, and with all the complexities, in a perfect world, it would have been that the discovery of the science behind nuclear power, fusion, and all that stuff, whatever, would have been used for that purpose and that purpose only, right? Like just energy, right? But instead, it was created to make a bomb, and a very powerful, destructive bomb. That being said, now that we're already there, right? Now now that we're already there in the sense of like, and where we are is even further than then, in the sense, what I mean by that is that when there's global powers that are in competition with one another, creating these things, how do you stop that? And I don't think you do, because clearly it didn't stop with nuclear power. Countries that continued to develop nuclear missiles and things of that nature, to arm themselves, because they want to make sure that they're the ones they can defend, whatever the case may be. Who cares? But even things like that, right? So you look at that, and then even if you look at like the space race thing, like it was about who can go into space first, and that was a competition between countries that in power, whatever, and what that can unlock, right? Technology. So as far as even satellites and things of that nature now, and all that. And I feel like AI is just another thing just like that, where it's like, I'm not sure there is any stopping that, because it's evident that even apart from just private corporations that can create these things, even now government has interest in creating these things, and trying to play the when, whether it's true or not, don't I'm just a messenger here, right? But what I mean, like, is like right now the idea is that the government's going to try and find a way to create powerful AI, but that they can hopefully control, and keep within the bounds of, I guess, human dignity and things of that nature. But even then, it's kind of like, well, when and how do you do that? Because you're failing to do it now, considering, like you just said, people can use AI now to create, the most basic things to the most egregious things. But
it's interesting, because with a lot of these things, they're always going to stay conceptual for this reason. Okay, so not to like cast any doubt or to be conspiratorial in any kind of way, but have you ever met someone personally and spoke to someone personally who was affected by a nuclear bomb attack? That they survived it, and they spoke to you to tell the tale. Have you met anyone in your entire life that's done that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so there's a few different ways you could take that, right? You could say that there are no nuclear bombs and that a nuclear explosion has never taken place, or you can say that if a nuclear explosion has taken place, anyone who could have possibly been able to experience it or to be able to witness it in any kind of fashion is gone, which is also kind of scary, I thought, right?
Right, right.
In the same way, AI poses that thing. Like it's always gonna the problem is always gonna be conceptual. That's why I don't go straight to talking about like, oh, what's gonna happen is they're gonna make these robots, they're gonna go around and they're gonna shoot us with machine guns. Like, no, I don't say that because the thing is that the problem starts at the concept. You know, like even
100%.
with nuclear weapons, the idea is more about like fear and security, right? It's like, oh, based on these vague concepts about the bomb, or the ownership of the bomb and where it is and who it is and why they want to use it and everything else but the bomb itself, right?
Right.
You're either secure or you're either not, basically, and your existence depends on it or it doesn't depend on it, even though it's completely out of your hands, right? And the same thing with AI. It's like, okay, so a variety of different things can happen to you, but either it'll happen to you and you'll never know, or it won't happen at all and it doesn't exist. AI is not really a problem. And whenever you get into those situations, it becomes like the 1% thing. It's like, okay, I could just literally disappear tomorrow and I would never have known that it was because of AI. But it's like, I know that it's a possibility now. And that's probably how it will always be.
For sure. For sure. I get what you're saying, for sure. So I mean, now it's funny because like now I'm thinking like, man, I wonder if there is somebody who survived the nuclear bomb, you know, like, because I never bothered to even like, you know, search that, you know, or
yeah,
you know.
I've heard of stories online and things like that, where, you know, if you're far enough away, you will deal with like fallout and stuff like that. And you might even be able to see like the explosion in the distance. But the thing, well, actually, you know what? The problem, from what I've heard, because there's a website, I forgot what not a website, a YouTube channel, where they talk about all these like different like scenarios. And one of the scenarios is like a nuclear bomb. And I believe that if you're actually within eyeshot of the nuclear bomb, it will blind you. So if you are looking at the even from like the farthest distance, if you're looking and you can actually see the explosion, if you happen to be just looking in that direction, you will be blind.
Wow.
Right? That's how powerful a nuclear bomb is. And then, of course, as you draw closer, you're going to just deal with more and more of those symptoms until, if you're close enough, you won't exist even on the atomic level, right?
Right.
But the thing about that is that that's so interesting. So what you're saying is that someone created a device that you can't witness. You can be affected by, but you can't witness it. Because if you saw it, then you would die. And if you're close enough, you would die. And like there's like a very slim chance that you're going to be in the vicinity and actually be able to tell the tale about it. But I don't know. It's interesting.
Other than Oppenheimer and all the scientists that worked at the site.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's weird.
Yeah.
They had the blast shield, but that was like what, like I mean, I don't know. I don't know the details of that, but I guess they had some sort of filters over it.
Yeah, they had they had the blast shield, and then but they did wear like protective lenses that, you know, were like, I don't know, powerful sunglasses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, that is interesting for sure, because it's like, it makes sense. Yeah, you know, just because of that, the fact that they wear that, and it's like, yeah. So if it was somebody that was actually, let's just say, in where did we drop it? Hiroshima. Was it Hiroshima?
Well, and Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So if you were in any of those places, then I mean, yeah, that's crazy. That's even just crazy to think about. But wow, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you're right. And this is I feel like a lot of things have that kind of and I say a lot of things, they're not like everything, but just a lot more things also that kind of carry that this concept of, like, you know, in the sense where, like, foresight, one really can't know how far something can go in its initial conception.
Yeah.
At least, especially if you're not even in the room of its creation, you know what I mean? If you're not even part of that discussion, even more so, I think it's further to us, like, you know, we're not thinking about it in that way. So, like, even I think that's why AI, us as just the outsiders, we don't really know how far this can go, so to speak, because we're not really the ones working on it.
Do you believe we're living in a simulation?
No. I don't. Shout out. I'm
I don't.
not that.
I
I'm
don't
not
either.
that guy.
I don't either.
I'm not that guy. I mean, hey, shout out to you if that's where you're at. I mean, hey, power to you. And
It's kind of in line with the discussion, though.
yeah, no, it kind of is though. Yeah, for sure. Let me see what Koji was adding to the conversation. He says AI is impressive, but fails to prove to me yet it can replace humans. Maybe tasks and smart self-operating systems, but not close to life. So far to go. How organisms and the spirit is, I'm gonna assume more. I don't think man or machine can outdo what God has made. Just my belief and thoughts. I'm down for my own R2D2. So let's go.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
right.
it's very much a Tower of Babel
He
situation.
said I can see future RoboCops. Yeah, no, you're right. It is.
Yeah,
It is very much that.
because
For
humans
sure.
can go beyond their station. They can go beyond what is meant for them, and when that does happen, there will be intervention. Um, that's actually at the bottom of the reason why I don't believe that. Even though AI is as dangerous as I think most of the AI catastrophists make it out to be, that
Mhm.
it won't actually come to pass. Just out of pure faith, it's not
Mhm.
going to happen.
Well, that's actually that's a wise way to look at it, actually. Um, because yeah, I mean, one can look at the Tower of Babel for sure, that story, and it is what it is, right? Like there was clearly in that story the intervention of God, right? But even in the things we're discussing now, like as far as nuclear, bombs are concerned, like it happened, sure, but one can say, well, let's have faith that human beings have the same decency that realize this isn't where we want to keep going, and now we have them, but it's like none of us really want to go there because we know what it can do. Yo, we got Abu Naz in the comment section. Glad I was able to see you live. Yo, brother,
Nice.
appreciate you stopping through, man.
Good to see Abu.
Say, Coach, what's happening? So yeah, dude. I mean, with that being said, yeah, like I think there's evidence that you can look at and say, like, I think even ourselves looking, we can probably, if we have that same sense of decency, same sense of conviction, we'll know when to stop, you know? Um, and yeah, because that's just kind of what history has shown us. So yeah, that's actually a great way to look at it, I would say.
Well,
Um,
you're a very optimistic person, and
yeah, you're right.
I I appreciate that. That's a good thing.
Hey, it's funny though. It's like I was always that guy, even even before. I remember, like, with the whole like Snyder Cut stuff, and with some of the silly stuff that was happening. I remember you guys were like, "Man, Vega, you're very optimistic, bro."
That is true. I always felt like I've changed in some ways. I do see a certain value to your optimism, whereas before I was like, "What is this guy talking about?" I just couldn't understand it. Not that I didn't respect you. It's just like I
Right.
don't know where it came from, but now I understand that you have to be in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. It's not
Yeah.
just a desire; it's a necessity.
Right.
Because if you aren't optimistic, then what?
Yeah. No. Exactly. That's what it is. It's not necessarily that I 100% believe in whatever optimism I'm pushing forward. I mean, sometimes it could be that. Sometimes it's just that it's actually more of a 50-50. And I'm just choosing that the 50% that is optimistic to let that be the force that moves forward rather than
Yeah,
uh projecting the other, the with the or whatever the opposite of optimism is. I can't think of it right now. Jesus.
pessimism.
There you go. Instead of letting that be what's in front, I'm just still choosing to have the optimism be what's in front. But if we were to like break down more like possibilities, you would then discover that I do still have that, other 50%, Um, so that's that, I'm
Yeah,
saying that
yeah.
it's I just feel like it's better to go step forward that way than the other way.
And that's a really
Um,
important thing, I think, especially in the online world where we so often live, because
mhm.
there's so much information. It's like if you can't know something for certain, then maybe taking the more optimistic path is the healthier path, at least, if not the true, or at least the healthier path.
Right.
Because if
right.
if you can't know something for certain, you can't know it. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. No, that's right. Obviously, if it's true, great. But even if it's uncertain, I'd still rather cling on to that than not.
so we're talking about hope and optimism right now.
Mhm.
So I think you know where I'm going with this.
Ah, let's go.
So I mean,
Let's go.
this was the OG discussion. I mean, we're gonna have to get to it eventually, right?
Eventually.
I mean, what do you think of the situation, the atmosphere, the landscape, if you will?
Mhm. Of what exactly?
The cul-de-sac, my friend, the cul-de-sac.
I'm assuming. Are we talking about this guy right here?
Maybe.
Is that what-
I heard he was. I heard that a certain version of him was a cul-de-sac, and I just wanted to know what you thought about it.
Okay. So yeah, hoping. Okay, that's actually great. Great question. Man, I'll say this. There's always hope to be had and optimism to be had about that. I said, please, for the love of God, leave that dog away. Oh, we're gonna get there for sure. So I'm hopeful and optimistic simply because, just like we said earlier, there's certain things you can look to in the past and say, when you're hopeful, or hope can persevere, right? The realist in me, though, is looking at the situation and saying, we're not moving in the same way we were moving before that was effective. So it's kind of hard to see that be the case now, right? This is like a math equation, right? Like, so if 2 + 2 is 4, that's what we need to replicate.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not replicating that equation or that formula that worked for us the first time around. But it's not just about that necessarily. It's just like, let's just, and I guess I'm using numbers simply because numbers matter, right? And there was a higher number of people working together before to push forward this idea of the Snyder Cut, right?
Yeah.
Where now it's definitely not that, right? Even though obviously, yeah, we still have people trying to campaign for whether it's restore the Snyderverse, whether it's sell the Snyderverse. But there's just nobody's working together anymore, you know what I'm saying, so to speak. And the cause is way more fractured than it was even then. Because obviously, going back to my optimism before, right? Like regarding the fractured movement that was then, it wasn't as fractured as it is now, right? Like there was issues, right? That I remember, and I was like, look, I think it could all work out. I think we could whatever. And I remember some.
Well, most of the people, I think, that
Yeah.
were probably instigating a lot of that fractious behavior. They got what they wanted, and they moved on to their, positions and got their journalist jobs, and now they're doing their thing, and that's why I think that they're not in the thick of it anymore.
100%. 100%. No, that's a fact. But like you just stated, it's just unfortunately the damage has been done already, right? So we're dealing with that now. And again, it's like it could happen, right? Like what we're asking for could happen, but it would take for us to get back to something that once was, in the sense of actually working together to get it done, rather than against each other, and putting more energy towards being focused on the same thing rather than energy on just whatever one thinks is the route to take.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is something that a lot of us haven't talked about, and I've been talking about a lot lately on Twitter.
Okay.
But what do you think because typically, us Snyder fans are talking about usually online movements, right?
Okay.
Like us promoting, we're talking about finances.
Yep.
We're talking about studio heads and executives. We're
Yeah.
talking about journalism, and these are different factors that have a control over what movies are going to get put out and what movies won't get put out.
Right.
But something that I've come to realize is that I don't think that we've really been looking deeply enough at the real cause of why the things have gone on. I think it's very easy for us to be like, oh, there's this one guy twirling his mustache who's in some sort of like top, he's at this really high level, this high rise building at this long table, and he's the guy who's the problem, right?
Right.
But I really feel like there are cultural issues, deep cultural issues that have led to where we are that you are not going to be able to fix by simply doing Twitter
yes,
things like and stuff like that, and that you're not going to be able to fix with awareness and things like that. Like you're gonna have to like make internal changes, and everyone's going to have to make internal changes in order for things to actually. And then there are like economic factors of finance, which are also widespread factors that don't have really anything to do with the movies themselves,
right?
That I think that play a role in all this.
Right.
What are your thoughts on some of the cultural aspects? Maybe like are there reasons why we're getting what we're getting now that don't have anything to do with just like mustache twirling executives?
I think that's a factor for sure. I if I'm understanding you correctly, I think that is a factor for sure, right? In the sense of, I want to say we discussed this, like I remember this was maybe part of the conversation a long time ago. Like, I think when there's like I think it would be evident that like there. And I'm trying to find a way to word this where it doesn't sound as based as probably.
Say it as based as possible. Please say it as based as possible. We definitely don't want to be like those other podcasts, right? It's like, it's like, please say it as based as possible.
Well, the base statement you've probably heard plenty of times thrown around, and again, this is just a part. I don't think this is the full picture, but this is definitely a part of like the holistic view of this. But it would probably be, I think, like whatever political or cultural messaging you want to put out there, and whether you consider that woke or whatever you want to call that, I think that is a factor for sure.
So wait. So just to make sure I understand what you're saying, you're saying that the new stuff is woke, and that's why it's coming out. That's why we're going this direction, is because it's woke. Because I've actually never heard that. I've never heard that take before.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so okay. This is how I see it. It's obvious that there's been a cultural conflict within what falls under the line of woke and what is woke, whatever. And honestly, who cares? I think we all know what we're talking about when that's being said. And it's obvious that like there was a push to whatever it is, like whether it's race swapping, whether it's
demasculinizing.
Yeah, demasculinizing, exactly. Yeah, for the sake of women empowerment, and someone has to fall.
Or not even that, but I mean, like,
but
Superman is.
Oh, we'll get there. No, for sure. I'm trying to say what kind of led to where we're at now, right? So I'm not talking about what's happening now. I'm kind of talking about kind of like what happened before we got here.
That's what I want to hear. Great.
So it was obvious that it was just blatantly happening to that level, right? Where it was like, we're gonna push female characters. And I don't care really. I'm just stating what happened culturally. I'm just speaking as the observer here, right? And so even in the, like, let's just say like something like Suicide Squad, we're like, oh well, we want less Joker, more Harley because she's gonna be who we're pushing forward now, right? Things like that, or and then demasculizing, like we want to make these characters that should be kind of like larger than life, just very
stoic.
Yeah, stoic, exactly. Now we're gonna just bring that whatever things like that nature, and then so forth and so forth. Like, you keep adding things to that, like we want to push more let's say social or not social, sexual ideology, to what it is now, and even now gender swapping as well, and things of that nature, and we're gonna push that for whatever all that was happening, right? And obviously there was kind of pushback to that, right? And whether some people loved it, some people hated it, and now we're just at a place where it's like, how can we mask that same message, right? Like what we really want to push forward. And I feel this is where you get to like movies like now Superman, where I mentioned this in one of my episodes. I didn't really go deep into it because nobody that I've talked to yet has, I guess, seen what I've seen, and I don't want to just say it because I'm not 100% sure I'm actually right on this.
Of course, and it's spicy,
It's spicy, yeah. So I'm looking at certain things in the trailer that I feel are going to be telling a certain kind of message that could be very underlining political, underlining cultural, and that kind of are supposed to speak on like where we are, where the climate of cultural, I guess, discussion is now.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that's at now. I think the idea is like the studios are finding ways to like, how can we keep pushing a certain message just a little bit more discreetly so there's less pushback. And I think the mediums that they find can do that best for them are mediums that have already IPs that
people are going to see regardless.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why they did it with Star Wars. That's why they do it with superhero movies, especially something like Superman,
So how is this new Superman different from the last? Because you're saying that, like, because you actually went in a direction I wasn't even originally planning on going, which is great. That's kind of what it's all about, right?
Right.
But so what's the cultural fingerprint of Snyder's work, and what's the cultural fingerprint of this work, and where is it
different?
changed? How's it different?
Yeah, no, that's great, because this is something I also touched on too, and that's that the difference between what I feel Snyder did to what other directors do, and not and I say other, like that's very, very general, so I don't want to make it seem like Snyder's the exception. I'm just saying, like, okay, let's just say
he's exceptional. I think he's exceptional.
No, he is, but he's not the only exception, is I guess what I want to point out. There's other exceptional directors that have this way of being able to do what Zach does that other directors also do. And that's that you can talk about things like, for instance, what we all love about like Man of Steel, BVS, is that it does introduce political, philosophical, theological discussion. But it's done in a way that still pays a sense of either reverence to the topic of discussion, or at the same time also respects the ability of us to draw our own conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't impose its own, how do you say, whatever dogma or ideology or philosophy that might be, well, let's just say the director believes, right? Or whoever is working on that film, instead of imposing it on you, it poses it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping I'm making sense here.
It offers it to you, and then you can take it as far as you'd like to.
Yes, exactly. Where something like now, it's like, this is what's right. This is what's right, and if you don't agree,
that's called a prescription. It's prescribing it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that that's the difference between what someone like Zack Snyder was able to accomplish with his films to what you see in these other films, you know?
Yeah, I think those are all great points. The thing that I've noticed a lot with the new movies
Hmm.
is that I feel like there is a so you know how there's a lot of discussion, especially around Superman, about is this Superman the Superman we need right now?
Hmm.
Okay, and typically the only argument that you'll ever hear against that, so the answer for the new Superman is yes, we need the Superman right now because of X, Y, and Z. Okay,
Hmm.
and then the argument you'll hear against that, usually from a Snyder fan or someone who's sympathetic to him, is actually Zack Snyder's Superman is the Superman that we need right now. But you know,
Mm.
the thing is, I don't think either of these answers are necessarily correct.
I get you. Yep.
And the reason why I don't believe that is because Man of Steel came out in 2013.
Hmm.
Okay, we know that Zack Snyder had kind of like a road he wanted to go on.
Hmm.
He's not a prophet. I mean, he's a storyteller, but it's like he wasn't gonna like, okay, I'm in 2 years gonna make this movie, another 2 years gonna make this movie, and then you know that I'm gonna do that 5 times. And every movie, when it comes out, is going to be the perfect kind of like touchstone for that era, that time. Like
Hmm.
Man of Steel came out in 2013.
Hmm.
So there's no way that they're gonna bring his Superman back
Hmm.
and it somehow just be perfect. I mean, it's certainly possible that it could be relevant in some ways, but I think the problem is that in online spaces, relevance
Hmm.
is too important, you know. And
Mm.
and the thing is, the reason why I even like Snyder in the first place is because of how eternal his stories are. You know, is
Mm.
how timeless they are. And
Yeah,
yes, they do touch on things, but they're so broad and philosophical and so deep and profound, and that when you watch them, they can kind of work in any time period,
that's a
you know,
fact.
because they're about deep human issues, right? So
Hmm.
whereas I feel kind of like what we are getting now is usually very superficial
Hmm.
movies where the idea is just to enjoy the movie as much as possible within the 2 hours that you're watching it,
Hmm.
and then maybe sprinkle in some kind of like notion, some sort of like sentiments about like, oh, you know, if only we were all nicer to each other, but nothing that's really like actually like profound and like actually can help you get to the bottom of the problem. It's just like
Yeah,
a sentiment, like, oh,
yeah,
you know, like it just feels. What if like a bunch of kids were cheering Superman's name? Wouldn't that feel so nice and cuddly?
right.
You know, it
Yeah,
doesn't mean anything. You know,
yeah.
oh, we need this right now. It's like, dude, you'll need it for like 2 hours. It's like right now assumes you're talking about like this period of time, this era that we're living in, like this moment, right? You know,
Right,
it's not just like, but like no, you're gonna go to the movie for 2 hours. You're gonna enjoy yourself with some popcorn, and then it's gonna do nothing for you.
right, right. No, that's fair. Yeah, I think you're right when you're saying, and actually, so I think you kind of though I feel like you kind of answered why people probably feel what they feel about Zack Snyder's Superman within the very thing you just said, and that's that it's because when you watch his movies, you can still watch them now, and somehow they're still relevant to what's happening, right? And more so because, like you said, his I guess you could say the elements he's using are elements that are
They're,
constant
they're
within
always
humanity.
relevant. Yeah,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
always relevant. They're constant within humanity. Um, where it's and so it's not really it's not even just about what he's able to do. It's more so even also paid. It probably actually also speaks on just who we are as human beings in the sense of like maybe Solomon was is right when he says there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Mm.
Nothing really ever changes, right? So when you're seeing that, it's like, well, maybe that's why something like Man of Steel and BVS and even whatever his all his films really just why they still have something to say about where we're at any time because it's this is who we are all the time. We're not really making any strides in like perfecting humanity or I guess to be better human beings or to whatever the case may be, and hence why and then even for like on the even on the objectivity of like government structure and things of that nature, same thing. Like it's we're still where we're at, so
Yeah.
even when you look at some of the even the political elements within his films, it's still saying something because it's still kind of political climate hasn't changed much, since what 2008 maybe 2000. I'm saying like
Yeah.
it just hasn't changed much. So or maybe actually probably go back into just to 2000. You know what I'm saying? So it's I think why people feel like Zack Snyder Superman is what we need, because it just seems that someone like Zack Snyder has not possibly his finger on the pulse, but he's just maybe I guess aware, I guess, of where we're at as a society. But again, also it could just be that nothing has really changed. And again, it's and actually you can even argue nothing has changed since forever. Like I'm as far as like just human being, the condition of human beings, right?
Hey,
Like
you're like human beings in conglomerate, like in all together.
yes,
The tendency of humans, especially as groups, they do lean in certain ways,
yes,
and of course individual people can rise above and they can do the right thing. They can do
right,
the honorable, the good, the true thing, right? Which is what Superman's about. It's
right.
about, I don't know, what did he say? He's like, he's saying, talking about like if there's any good people anymore. I forgot the exact terminology. My brain's fried. It's when Lois was like trying to comfort him and he was flying away. And
Yeah,
like, what did he say?
no one stays good in this world.
Yeah. But of course, the story was that that's not true. That there are some that can do that, that can inspire.
Yes, yeah.
So
Well, that's why that line of when Ben Affleck, Bruce Wayne's it's talking to Diana at the end in the funeral and the cemetery, and she's like, I left the world, because it was a world full of horrors, and man, in a sense was like just so corrupt, right? That's essentially what she says, something like that. I can't really remember exactly what she says, but then he says men are still good. We fight, we kill, we rebuild, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's probably the truest statement of the film, is that statement alone. It's that we are flawed, but we also do good. We also strive to do good. We do come together for the greater good. From time
like when it counts.
Yeah, when it counts. And time has proven that. And whatever it is that pushes that forward, right? Like we can leave that up for people to decide that. You can look at history and determine what that is for yourself, but whether it's let's just say whether it's a intervention of God or whether it's just that mankind does finally, you can have faith in human beings to, I guess, find the greater good. Whatever it is, obviously history has proven that just does happen, right? So that's the truest statement in that film at the end, is that as bad as we can be, we also do good when it counts.
So with that said, right? So like obviously you've described a very hopeful statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the argument is always, actually, this is what people want. This is what, like, and that's also kind of what I have kind of I kind of rejected that idea that a lot of Snyder fans have said, like, actually, people want Snyder Superman, they just don't know it, or something like that. That's basically like I would say the thesis of a lot of Snyder fans, is that like, if you put it out, it would do gangbusters because people, just vague people, want this. And I don't know. I don't actually think. See, I think that when I said cultural earlier, you were kind of thinking about like the powers that be, like everything's top down and they create the culture, we just simply consume it. But
yeah,
I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that a lot of the audience, because of where they're at in their lives, they do actually want what we're getting. And
Mhm.
there have been a few flops, movies that come out that I didn't like and they flopped. So I could say,
Mhm.
oh, that affirms, that justifies, that vindicates me. But but there's also been many, like Deadpool and Wolverine, right? Like
Mhm.
it's as slop as slop gets. I mean, it's self-aware slop, but it's still slop. And people really, really enjoyed that movie. So I think people don't want to think too hard. Yeah, have you seen the movie Vox Lux?
I haven't, but if I could just offer some perspective there that I feel, because I think I know what you're trying to say, and I also agree with you. I don't think people are right 100% with how they phrase what they're saying. I don't think it's that people don't know what they want. I don't think that's true. Um, I'll say that the evidence. So here's the thing, which is funny when I personally hate when people say that, because it's like it's almost like you're trying to give credit to the people who hated those films as if they were right about something. And I think that's the wrong angle. And it's like the evidence is that they were wrong. And what I mean by that is that the numbers speak for themselves, right?
Hmm.
When you're looking at the success of Man of Steel, that speaks for itself. Like you don't go through a loophole, or hula hoops to try and argue with people that think that that movie was bad. It's kind of like I can see why you're trying to maybe argue against them per se individually, but then this idea that you have to defend the film against the unknown number of people that hated it, it's kind of weird because it's like, again, the number speaks for itself. And then when you even talk about BVS, even bigger numbers, it speaks for itself, right? So it's like I don't have to imagine who liked or disliked the film. The numbers speak for themselves, and the reality is internet engagement. It doesn't really quantify the actual numbers. It's a portion of a greater number that actually exists. If that makes if I'm making sense, right? So like even if there was all this, let's say, hoorah online about Man of Steel or BVS back in its day, that the mistake by the studio was always to think that that mattered when it didn't, because you can't really quantify the noise online
Well, I
with
never
what
said that. I mean,
no
I
no no I no I'm not saying you said that. I'm saying to the argument that's always being made with other people, and so now to like full circle, what I would say is we won't really know if this movie is needed or not, because we're not there yet, right? Like we'll know once we're there, right? Like however well it does will determine whether that's really what people wanted or not, right? So we really don't know, is my whole point. Um, and we can, I guess, look at other movies, more recent movies, and determine if that might say something to a degree of what this one particular movie could do, right? Like Superman. And I think when you mention something like Deadpool and Wolverine, I think that's the exception, because there that is a movie amongst other movies that are somewhat similar, but didn't do what this movie did. You know what I mean? And then there's arguments to be had, or not arguments, but discussions to be had about that. Like, well, what about this one particular movie made it so special that every other movie doesn't offer, even though they are similar in many ways, right? As
using
far
that
as
same line of logic,
Mhm.
okay. So
Yeah,
let's the elephant in the room with the Deadpool Wolverine thing is that you have two characters people like. You put
hmm
them together and you make a
yeah,
movie and makes a lot of money. Okay, very simple. It's not very complicated. The story didn't matter. It's just that they got to like say the line, do the thing, strike
yep,
the pose, and
yep.
that's all right. That's very cynical. Just
hmm
that on its own. So
But also keep in mind, this is something that was brewing, like, right, like, so to Ryan Reynolds' credit, and maybe even Hugh Jackman's credit, they were posing this concept like stoking the idea in our brains since the very first movie, right? So credit given where credit is due. Ryan Reynolds knew how to market this character,
It was
right?
a marketing situation.
Yeah,
So
it's for sure. And I say marketing, and that's kind of a maybe a very simple, statement, but like even just I say marketing because it was the way he was promoting this for a while now, right? And not just promoting because it's like you can't really promote something that wasn't official, but he knew that this is what he wanted to do since the beginning, right? So since Deadpool 1 within the audience's brain, this has been the thought is like, when do we get Wolverine, right? When do we get because he was mentioning Wolverine since Deadpool 1. So even though the story isn't necessarily important to the overall trilogy that he put out there, it kind of the only thing that mattered was that did you achieve what you insinuated in our minds, the audience, since Deadpool 1, right? So it's not
what
like it
can
was just
James Gunn
random.
do? What can James Gunn do to make Superman successful? His Superman successful.
I mean, I don't know, bro. I really don't know. You know what I'm saying? I just really don't know. I look. This is what I told Sil when we talked about it. Is that I feel the people who probably love DC, no matter what's out there, are gonna go watch this movie. And like I said, that's good for them. People who are, I think, like Marvel fans and James Gunn fans are gonna go watch this film because it's his style of film, and if you're a fan of his style, which is very much the Marvel formula, you're gonna go watch this film. Does that mean that general audiences are gonna flock to this film? I don't know. I think one notion that he's trying to push forward that might work for him is the whole Crypto the dog thing. You know what I'm saying? He's the baby Yoda to Mandalorian.
Yep.
That's what he is. Like it's a Superman in this film. That apparently seems to work for the Mandalorian, but it still stands that doesn't necessarily mean it's successful for everything else, right? Because they even within the Star Wars universe, they try to replicate that concept of baby child type thing to a grown man. That isn't the first time it's been done, but even within that concept, let's just say they tried to even imitate that with Obi-Wan. And granted, maybe it's because Leia is not a monster or a little, she's not a creature. So maybe you can argue that that's the reason, but
you can't sell like baby Leia dolls,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same. It's not the same.
It's not the same, because again, it's not. Yeah, it's definitely not the same. But it was somewhat of the same dynamic, right? Like younger, fatherly figure to type whatever, like babies, whatever type thing. And you saw that even kind of replicate. They actually even replicated it in Bad Batch. You know what I mean? So, but again, it's not a creature. So I don't know if that's the that's the cheat code, right? Like if it's not a human, it's actually a creature. That's what's more susceptible to the audience, right? So that's why the dog,
like a dog, or yeah.
So there's things he's clearly doing to try and appeal to a general audience. I'll say that my thing that I think is that I'm in a place where I think people are just not interested in seeing too much of the same thing. And I think that's why a lot of superhero movies aren't doing so well, with the exceptions of something like Deadpool and Wolverine. And I'm not going to call it superhero fatigue. I don't think that's what it is. I think the fatigue is in it's all the same thing. So why am I going to waste my money to go see this in theater when I could just wait to go see it on streaming? And the only ones I'm going to spend time and money to go watch are the ones that really intrigue me the most and possibly appeal to me on some other level.
Are you going to see the new Superman movie?
It hasn't appealed to me just yet, to be honest.
So no.
No, not yet. Like nothing's yeah, no, actually no, because like I told even Carlos yesterday, because um, you can tell obviously that the marketing has changed for the movie. They're trying to show more cool action scenes and things of that nature. And like I told Carlos, I'm like the deed's been done already for me personally, and possible viewers like me, I think, and that's that you already showed me some things in that movie that I don't care for in a movie. Um, and that's why I have no interest to see it in theater. I'll see it when it comes out of streaming because any movie, for me to properly critique it, I actually have to watch it. I'm not this kind of person who just hates on a movie for the sake of. I have to watch it for myself to see whether or not I actually like it or not. Um, but to do I am I pumped and hyped to go see this movie in theater? No, not really. I'll just wait for it to get on HBO Max and I'll watch it then.
I'm gonna go see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that I think that I'm gonna be like many people who see the movie. See, I
Hmm.
don't care about the movie. I'm not enthusiastic about it at all. I really wouldn't go see this movie if it were up to me, to go see it or not.
Yeah.
But I had some friends who, hey, I want to hang out with these guys, and they want to go
Right.
see it. They're passionate about it, and I feel like that's I don't know. I mean,
That's the only way I will watch the movie is it, like, which I told Carlos, or Carlos even put that out here. For first, he said, "I'll pay for the ticket for you then if you don't want." And then I said, "All right, well, that's probably the only way I'll actually go watch the movie. If somebody wants me to go watch the movie with them and they pay for my ticket, I'll do that, you
mhm.
know." But do I'm not enthusiastic to pay for my own money. And there's plenty of other movies to go watch with my friends that are just as great, or it probably might be that are more appealing to me that we're all excited for, like Jurassic Park,
Yeah,
or
Jurassic Park is the one
you
that
know
I'm really excited about for sure.
exactly. No, for sure, me too. And to me, and actually, I'm more excited for that right now more than any of the other films that are coming out that month. Even more than Fantastic Four, to be honest.
Well, a big part of it, I think, it's funny because like the reason why I'm excited about Jurassic Park, the new one, and actually
Mhm.
it's Jurassic World, right? Not Jurassic Park,
Right, that's right.
is because the past two Jurassic Worlds, the
Hmm.
first one was okay. It was like fun, it was definitely a theme park experience.
Hmm.
Uh, but after that, I kind of just felt like, after having seen that first one, I'm not really sure. It kind of made all the dinosaurs feel like animatronics, like theme park animatronics. They're just to kind of be like, oh, look at the dinosaur. It's like, oh, it's coming toward. There wasn't any true thrills, any true like fear. There wasn't any like real stakes or anything like that to that the first movie, and the movies that followed didn't really feel like that either.
Hmm.
Whereas this movie
I
definitely
have
is
to
trying to.
rewatch it.
Well, the first movie definitely was like there was that one scene where that one woman was getting like eaten by the sea monster or whatever, and
Right.
it was kind of funny. It was like weird. It was like she was like getting tossed around, and she was like,
But,
ah.
but does that say something about us? Because that's actually okay. I'm glad you said that because I feel like it actually says something more about us than it does about the film.
Does
You
it?
know,
Because, for instance, in
Mhm.
Deadpool Wolverine, if Deadpool kills a guy, are you gonna feel like horrified and sickened and mortified and
No,
like no, you're not because it's purposefully that way. It's meant to be funny. Like, you do have to get people invested. It's not like yeah, but go ahead. I want to hear what you had to say.
no, yeah, no, no. Look, so, but I see. How do I put this? And look, I could possibly be speaking for myself here, but the reality is, I laugh at anything that's like that now, even in a scary movie. You know, nothing really scares me like that, or makes me feel any kind of way.
I'm
The
sorry, man.
mo
You want to talk about it? It's like you got some stuff on your. You got
I mean, like the most I'll get scared is like if something just pops up at me by surprise. You know what I mean? But and even then, it's not scared. It's just like, oh, it's not that caught me by surprise. Like, so
do you
I'll
get
jump a
do you
bit.
get a sense when you're watching a movie? Do you get a sense of stakes? Like when a movie sets the stakes, do you actually get invested, or do you no longer get invested in movies anymore?
No. So there are movies that I do sense the stakes, right? And I think it depends on how the movie presents it, right?
Well, like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and prepares for it. But I do feel that, but see, what I'm trying to say is that so it's not to say that, how to put it, like, I guess it depends the world it's in and how it's presented. Because I guess for me, something like Jurassic World or Jurassic Park, whatever the case may be, it's, even though you were trying to point the you're trying to paint it as you were trying to paint, like, if there's a difference between Deadpool and that. For me, there was still one and the same, because it's like dinosaurs aren't real today. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm not that invested of, like, the stakes being realistic, right? So I can somehow, I'm still disconnected
But
from
somehow, so that's called verisimilitude. The
Mhm.
ability to get someone invested in a story as though it were real, even though it's.
Okay.
So obviously, you can watch Superman, Batman do stuff, and you know that even though they're not real or doing stuff that's not possible, that there's still a reason to get invested in it.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, you're right.
But
You're right.
what you're saying is that, like, you kind of think that dinosaurs are kind of silly, just like James Gunn thinks that comic book characters are silly, and therefore,
Yes. Yeah. To a
no
certain
matter what you
degree.
do,
To a
yeah.
certain degree. Because look, I'll put it like this. Like, um, you're probably, you know what? You're no, you're probably right about something here. You're right. Look, I'll say this much. Watching the first Jurassic Park, and this is, I guess, what I was trying to get at, that I personally think, is that I just think we've become so desensitized to death that it just doesn't impact us as much more
Well, that's
as much
true.
as it used to. That's, I guess, what I was trying to say.
That is
Because
true,
yeah,
though.
I know that when I watched Jurassic Park, like the first original one, I was for sure scared, right? Because the idea of dinosaurs existing in the jungle, in that environment, and yeah, like that was real. Like that too, as a kid, for sure, like spooked me. Um, and even, like, I remember playing video games like Dino Crisis, or that were very much like Resident Evil with zombies, but with dinosaurs and stuff. Like that did scare me, right? Like there was a way that I was somehow involved in that story. Um, an element that, yeah, still brought some sort of, like, oh snap,
Thrills,
I don't want these raptors to come, like if they're creeping around the corner, I'm gonna freak out.
yeah.
So yeah, no, you know what? You're right. There is that element still does exist. I'll say that much for me. Depending if the film can project that well, for sure. If the elements make sense. Um, but the killing part, for sure, I think I've just become desensitized to, because death, I think overall, I think we've all become desensitized to. So like how someone dies can appear more funny to me than, like, ooh, that's nasty
Well,
and ugly.
you want to know why I felt that way, is
Hmm.
because, so I mean, this goes. I love the fact that every topic we can talk about, we can
Hmm.
tie it back into the whole story of Zack Snyder's DC movies. Like,
For
for
sure.
instance, how when people are running away from crashing buildings in his movies,
Mm.
it feels like there's more weight, there's more consequences, more stakes, versus
Yes.
in other movies. See,
Yes.
and the reason is because throughout, it's not just an individual thing. It's not like, oh, this one guy got crushed in this certain way and he screamed in this certain way, and that's what. No, it's not about that.
I
It's
get
the
you.
whole tone, the whole fabric of
Yes.
the movie that lends itself so that when that moment does come, you realize the gravitas that is there. So like
Yes.
in Jurassic World, you're the you're never really you always feel like everything's a spectacle. Everything is kind of just um
Mm.
it is there just to kind of be in awe of, and that you're kind of just like in a theme park the whole time. So
Mm.
when you see like this one scene where this person, and it's not even really a gruesome scene, it's kind of like you have to watch it to understand. I can't possibly really describe it to you
Yeah.
perfectly, but um, that when those moments do come up, and also it was a character who you really weren't attached to. There was no emotional there. There's no humanity there, right? It was just kind
Mm.
of a thing they show. It was also a spectacle, right?
Yeah.
And the movie wasn't really. taking that with the gravitas that it needed. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, in the new trailer, I get the feeling just by the trailer that all of the threats, all of the daunt and harrow that's going on is very sincere,
Mm.
and it's very like close to home, and that's what the real difference is. I would say.
I no, I agree. I now I see what you're saying, and yeah, you're right. You're right. I can agree with that. You're right, 100% about that. And I think that's a lot of movies. You know what I'm saying? Not just Jurassic World, but yeah, you're right. A lot of movies are more in it for the spectacle than the actual impact it's supposed to have. Um, and yeah, I didn't consider that. Well, but you're right. You're right. And it's also hard for me to, I guess, speak on that because I just don't really remember how I perceived the Jurassic World when I first watched it. You know what I mean?
That's true. It's hard to talk about the subject when we both don't really have the image in our minds perfectly.
Yeah, so so I really don't know. But like as a base statement, I agree with what you're saying. Um,
The reason
movies,
why I brought it
yeah,
up, though, the
hmm
reason why I brought it up was because this is a little bit of we went on a tangent. I'm bringing it back actually. is that is that I'm excited about this new Jurassic World because I feel like it's shifting the franchise in a direction that I want it to go.
mm,
So even if this movie came out, like I'd probably watch the movie anyway if I didn't feel like that. But I'm even more excited because I feel like
right.
it's reclaiming some sort of territory, it's reclaiming some sort of space, if you will. And a lot of people feel that about franchises nowadays, like it was Superman, and whatnot. This new Superman's going to bring hope back. It's not like, oh, Superman's always been hopeful. This is another great Superman movie. He's
Mm,
he's redeeming something.
mm,
And I guess part of it was like, okay, do you feel kind of like that about, because you're a very case by case guy in general,
hmm
but do you get a sense that like, that's an element of what's going on here, and that's another reason why if Zack Snyder brought his movie back, it wouldn't necessarily have the same
No,
impact because it's like,
I okay. No, I'm glad you asked that question because
mm,
this is my answer there. And yeah, I guess it is still somewhat case by case, but at the same time, not. So my thing here is always I feel like when people are I think this is the problem with in general when it comes to like people having this discussion. Not what we're talking about necessarily, but the kind of what you're referring to with that I've seen also, and this is on all sides, not just like one specific side.
mhm,
I feel like there's a sense of dishonesty in the sense of like because you're only seeing it from your lens, you're not open to seeing the full dynamic of what we're talking about here, right?
yeah,
So there are some people that'll feel what you're saying, but even in that same sentence, you are dismissing the fact that that existed for even the last Superman. But because you didn't see it, you don't think it was. Not you, but like the person who feels that
yeah,
way. And so there's this honesty there in the sense of like, it isn't your statement isn't necessarily the holistic truth. It might be true to you, but it isn't the truth to the overall discussion, right? So that being said, I do feel like there's when we're talking about who's interested in seeing Superman and or who's excited for it or who's what are people looking for, there's like many different people that exist in that question, right? Because it isn't just that group of people that are thinking, oh, this is them bringing back some sense of redemption or hope. Like that's not the only kind of person that exists in whether it's DC's fan base, whether it's Superman fan base, and whether it's just cinephile fan base, like and actually not even cinephile, but like DC film fan base. That I feel people forget that exists. That's separate of people that are DC fans. Like some people just know DC for its movies
mhm,
and have never picked up a comic book. They've never picked up or never saw an animated version of these characters. All they know is, Batman, Batman Begins, or Batman, 1989, or Superman Returns, or Man of Steel. Like that's their knowledge of DC. That's what they think DC is, right? And I think that is more prominent, personally, in my opinion. But again, it's we don't really know, we really can't quantify this. But if I had to guess, I would assume there's a larger DC film fan base than there is a purist Superman fan base. You
Oh
know?
yeah. Well, because films are just the
Yeah,
prestige format.
that's what I'm trying to
And
get at here, right?
that's why everybody wants their thing to be a movie, and they want their movie to be
A
portrayed exactly the way they feel it should be, so that
hundred
way
percent.
their thing can be shown to the greatest audience in the way that they deem that it's necessary.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the underlying truth there, right? And then, but now if I were to, now that now that I think that, right, like that's my thought process. As I'm thinking, this my thought process is this. The reality is you know, again, we can't really quantify, but within the people that I've spoken to that are not that are not specific DC fans, but just fans of the films that they've seen throughout the years, they do see DC in a certain light that hasn't been presented in that form ever since the fall of, or I say the fall of, but like let's say ever since it was just like after, let's just say maybe Justice League, you know what I'm saying? Where like, or with the exception of Aquaman, right? And that's why I personally believe that again, you do have to look at the numbers, and that does kind of matter when, and it matter in the sense of like just discussion. It doesn't really matter overall, like it's important, but for the topic of discussion, it matters because it does speak on what went wrong, you know, and because what went wrong, and that this is again, if we're going to be honest, fully honest, it wasn't just about the Zack Snyder fan base. That's not what just went wrong here. What went wrong is that there was a sense, there was a certain formula or a certain um, uh, identity, I guess you could say, of what DC was to just even the film audience on the big screen. And when you even go as like, I know when I talked to Phil, like we mentioned just the Dark Knight trilogy, right? And that set a tone going forward that was successful for the film audience, but fan base, not just DC fans. It did well amongst just audiences, right? And that again, when you look at even the success of Man of Steel and BVS, that speaks to that, right? But the reality is you could even go back to something like the Tim Burton Batmans, and they presented the same thing, a similar element that was known to be DC. So you can go that far back, and then even if you're going to be even more honest, is you can even go as far back as the Christopher Reeve Superman, and in its most well received films, there's something that exists in those films that exists in the Tim Burton DC franchise, that exists in even Nolan's trilogy, that exists even in Snyder's I guess Superman's story arc, and then other movies that simultaneously came out at the same time. And that's, I think, what people would identify if you were just a DC, fan base. But even in the more recent times, right? If we're just going to stick to the Dark Knight era, to then Snyder's era, that I feel technically still continue what came before, and that's that it does go back to this. And I say this all the time. It's like a lot of people say that, oh, DC is dark, and it's like, no, it's not that it's dark. Batman in its own right is a character that I guess is an element of the dark, right? So that might appear to be true in that context, but when you're looking at just the overall way that Superman has dealt with things in the movies, to even Batman, whatever, and then once you go forward to what Zach was trying to do with Man of Steel, BVS, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and where I think Nolan actually just perfected that, and then Zach just carried that torch, and that's that. How do you make these characters feel real, like relative to the world you live in, right? And that's actually DC's formula overall. Also, I think even when you're talking about just the way they present themselves in the comics, right? They use
Marvel is actually, I don't know. I don't actually totally think that's true. I think Marvel superheroes tend to be the more grounded and the more
Mm,
yeah, I mean, like just like Spider-Man. I mean, X-Men with all of their social issues, and Punisher with all of his issues, and even Hulk, and now you can get into like Thor, which is not, that's a little bit more kind of fantastical or whatnot. But
yeah.
I always find that like the Justice League, they're so much they're so larger than life, and they're so bigger and better and above, and they live in a different world than everyone else. Whereas, I find the Marvel characters are always amongst the world.
So, okay, hold on. Let's unpack that. I know what you're trying to say, right? So,
because I'm a Marvel comics fan,
no, for
but I'm a
sure.
DC movie fan.
So check this out. This is why I think this is what matters here. You're right. They both do it. I wasn't trying to say, I never said Marvel didn't do it. I think Marvel does it in a different way. You're right. They have essentially characters that, I guess more. They have characters that, within their own Avengers, let's just say, are, I guess, more human than not, with the exception of like Thor and Hulk, I guess, right? But even Hulk is still human, right? And then obviously they don't have made up cities. They use New York. So that makes you think that they're grounded. And sure, that's how they ground their characters. But then it's the elements that surround that are a bit different. Now you're right. X-Men, on the other hand, I'll give you credit. Yes, X-Men they did things like trying to take social issues and things of that nature that make it seem like they're more grounded. And again, I agree. Like they've done that. And it's not to say that other characters also haven't. For sure. You can
Captain America, Spider-Man.
I was just about to say, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Characters like Captain America. So that's there. Again, I never said that Marvel doesn't do it. What I was trying to iterate is that what DC has done well in the films also does exist in their comics as well. And though you're right, there's characters like Superman, alien, so not really human, but the way they present him to people as a human, like, as far as how he's raised and the ideals that he lives up to, things of that nature are still human based, relative based to that, whatever. Obviously, Batman, we don't have to break that. That's obvious. It's the way they present these characters that I feel the way they deal with the challenges that do exist in our world also is the way that DC grounds their characters. Even when you do have characters like Wonder Woman, who's a demigod, Superman, who's an alien, Martian Manhunter, who's an alien, and so forth, I guess. But or Aquaman, who's Atlantean, which obviously mermans don't exist, but whatever.
Well, to encapsulate what I think you're saying, I think that DC characters are more archetypal. So what I mean by that is like, okay, by having a character who's invincible, who's basically immortal, who's got all these strengths and abilities, he's actually able to kind of hone in on what it means to be human more so,
right?
Because he can examine these things from a different perspective. I
Right.
heard something. I saw a wallet closed.
yeah. Just because I know he just posted he's about to leave. He put, as far as I'm concerned, my wallet is closed. Good luck, James. You and your gunners call. Have fun. Oh, that's funny. I mean, yeah, that is a true aspect for sure. And I wouldn't call him a gunner's call, but there is a gun fan base for sure. But he said, "I gotta go, brothers. An absolute deep dive, and I enjoyed myself. Much love to you both. Have a great rest of the night. Appreciate you, Abu Naz. Thank you for stopping by and just indulging our our conversation here. We appreciate you, brother. Have a good night." My bad. Go ahead, Mike. So you're saying,
yeah. So it's like, like with Spider-Man and him trying to keep a job and deal with family issues and whatnot. Like it's less like there's less philosophical and steps and layers to his character in regards to how he, there's more like mundanity.
Yeah,
going on there.
Mundane type. Yeah.
Right. Whereas Superman is human in a philosophical sense because he's not human in every other way. So you can really pinpoint the aspect that he's human. He's human because of these things. Because if he wasn't as larger than life in all his other ways, then you wouldn't, some of the more eternal and philosophical and deeper ways might not shine through. And that's how all the characters are. They all are.
But isn't that, wouldn't you say that's also the same though? So okay, I'll put it like this, I get what you're trying to say for sure. But even in that aspect, I feel like aren't they doing similar things though in the sense of like duality of character, right? You know, by night or by at other moments you're by day, whatever you're Spider-Man or or vice versa.
It's
Like
less the case of Marvel characters. There's definitely more of the whole alter ego thing going on with the DC, especially the primary DC characters. Like the B-list characters, like the B-list Marvel characters might have some of that going on, but the A-list Marvel characters seem to be like, oh, I am who I am.
yeah, that's true. Like I was just discussing that with Carlos, right? Yeah, like on the Marvel side, you got Tony Stark, Iron Man. And like, there's no secret there. Steve Rogers is Captain America, with the exception of maybe Spider-Man. Not everybody knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And other characters alike for sure. But for the most part, everybody's on Front Street. Thor's Thor, whatever. The Bruce Banner, Hulk. And that's true. But and here's the thing. I'm not, and I'm sure you feel the same way. I think that's a good thing, right? Because in the sense of like, this is what I personally appreciate why there is DC and why there's Marvel. Although, even though, like you said, I think the more you dive into other characters, apart from just the Justice League or apart from just the Avengers, they essentially all still do the same thing, right? There is characters you can find in Marvel or in DC that are a bit more grounded. They are who they are, and it is what it is. Contrary to like, like once you get, the other guys, and then vice versa. Like you just said, there's B-listers within, I guess, Marvel that they do the whole dual identity. And I think that's good because it allows you to tackle many different facets that do exist in life, right? Because not everything is clear cut, right? There is, the dynamic of, how do you say, valuing maybe what you do for work, let's just say, but somehow leading a different life. Like we do that in real life. You know what I mean? Not everything is clear cut. Like you're not essentially the same guy at work that you are at home, or you're not essentially the same personality you are on your media platform as you are when you're home.
Different masks.
So, yeah, there's we do wear masks. So I think that still is a good thing in the concept of like when you're diving into characters that deal with the duality, contrary to just at the same time you can be who you are, all the time, everywhere, and there's also value there, right? There is a value to that, So I feel like both things offer something, right?
I do think there's a situation though where like, you have these characters, they've been around for a long time, they've had many stories, and you have nerds like us who get on podcasts and we create arbitrary lines where basically we have to find like some sort of like the spirit of Marvel, the spirit of DC. So we keep on extrapolating until we find some slight difference. And it's like at the end of the day, is it really that worthy of talking about? Like probably not. It probably isn't. And honestly, like one of my most unoriginal takes is the idea that like Marvel is kind of the more like, oh, they're humans who aspire to be gods, and DC are gods that aspire to be humans. Like that's like that's my least novel take, for sure. Yeah. But I do see some truth to it. Or at least what I would say is the things that attract large audiences to the comics and to the movies seem to be those elements. Like people like the way that Marvel does their characters in this way, and they aren't as interested in how DC does that same kind of thing, but they are interested in how DC does their characters in this other way, and less interested about how Marvel does their characters in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Look, this is, I guess, and you're right. Like, this is the issue. Like, yeah, there's guys like us trying to decipher what's what, and it really probably doesn't even matter, but it's fun,
Yeah, of course.
We do it. And I guess what I'll say is this is like, I'm not sure that's true just because like I'm in certain like comic book groups on social media and everywhere, whatever. And some are like prominent DC, some are more Marvel leaning, whatever. And what I find is the object of discussion of interest with most of the Marvel groups that I'm in, that infatuates them about what they're reading in Marvel, it's never the story, it's never the context and the substance in the story. It's more about, oh, the new power levels,
Oh yeah,
like what he can do now, whatever. And it's more, they're more interested in that,
But
in those forums, more than they are
how
interested in
about
the action.
DC? Do you not feel like that's the same way for DC?
And for DC, I've gotten other things. Now, maybe again, this is just my experience.
It might just be the groups, because I'll tell you, anime is like that too.
Yeah. For sure.
You get into like generic anime groups, like not like specific groups for certain shows or whatnot.
Mhm.
And most of these generic anime groups are like talking about power levels and like who's better than what and how much aura they had in this one
Right.
scene. Like just like the most superficial stuff, like, oh yeah. Oh, he was aura farming then. It's like, but how about the actual story?
Yeah. No, for sure. It's just so funny because it's so true.
Yeah.
But yeah, and look, when I say what I'm saying about these Marvel forums I'm in, it's not to say that they're all saying that. It's just the number of people talking about that outnumber the guys that the little numbers of guys in that group that actually we go back and forth about the context of the story and stuff. Where in the DC forums I'm in, it's always purely mostly about the story. Of what's happening, what's going on, the challenges being faced, whatever. It's never really about the new power that Superman unlocked, or because if we're honest, there isn't any comics like that really coming out. So DC doesn't focus on new power levels, new
costumes, or like the superficial stuff.
Yeah, they're more focused on. They're more story oriented, which is why I personally steer more towards DC content.
A lot of Marvel fans would take issue with that, though.
I'm sure, but once again, my experience, I just see more guys talking about the new powers unlocked. Oh, he's now got cosmic power. He now can do this. He can now obliterate.
Godzilla is the new who's the flaming skull head guy? My brain's like fried. Spirit of Vengeance. Ghost Rider.
Yeah. Ghost Rider.
Yeah, Godzilla is Ghost Rider. Like, oh my god, I can't believe it. Or it's like
it's like that, and it's like, again, just my experience. But going back to what we were talking about, right? The reality is even let's just say you're right? Let's just say you're right about DC not being grounded. The reality, though, is they've accomplished that way better on film than Marvel has. That's just the reality. And that's, I think, the reason why it was successful as it was. And it's not saying that, and obviously Marvel didn't have to worry about that because they have been successful. But I also think that's credited to the fact that when you do offer something different, it benefits you, right? So the fact that there could be a market that offers you more than just one thing, I think people appreciate. I think the audience appreciates that, right? And I think that's why there was a peak moment in comic book movie, existence, when you did have both DC and Marvel, putting out some of the best stuff they could in theaters, and why they were both successful.
On that note,
mm-hmm.
Within the spirit of the conversation, a hot take is that the cinematic universe was a mistake. What do you think?
I don't think it was necessarily. I think, and I'm assuming we're referring specifically to DC, right? Because obviously it worked well for Marvel.
Well, it
kind of did and it kind of didn't, right? Okay, right. One can actually argue that now.
That's how it ends for it. I would argue that the way that it ended for Marvel and the way that it turned out for DC is how it was always going to go. It was simply just a matter of time, and that, if you want to actually make a cinematic universe, and you continue on like forever in the same way that you would have a comic continuity, and you just kind of like remix the characters, you can't really do that in movies.
Yeah, no, okay. So, all right, hold on. There's two ways to look at this, right? And one is you're absolutely right in a sense, right? Because obviously because they play out the way it played out, right? So you can't argue that. But then the argument comes in, I guess, or the rebuttal would be, well, is that just because it was intended that way, or is it because unfortunately people make decisions that made it go that way, right? Because I think we all know, even though, yeah, DC was trying to put together a cinematic universe of their own, right? Obviously, that's now known. It's obviously obvious, though, that Zack Snyder had every intention of not going about it the way Marvel did, right? And he was trying to tell a story in a different format, which I think is something that I appreciated. Because it felt very more grander, like, I don't know if that's the right word.
Grandiose.
Yeah, grandiose. There you go. It felt more grandiose, like felt like a more epic film because of that. Like, it's something, to the liking of something like
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, you know what I'm saying? And as much as I guess you could say Star Wars has fell off, but even to like its original core, the very much soap opera drama that you almost were getting, in that universe, in its initial inception. It felt like that's what we were getting from Zach with his work, in introducing that universe, that I personally appreciated. But for the sake of just the discussion, could we argue that if the studio would have never interfered and would have stayed the course, that would have played out different for them, separate of what Marvel did, and it wouldn't have hindered them in the same way, because again, it would have been a different formula or a different approach to building that kind of universe. One, and then two, then it's the argument could be made of, is the problem that you got these studios, mostly Marvel at this point.
Disney.
Yeah, Disney. Actually, yeah, that's right. Mostly Disney, that are just like, bro, like, you're putting out 3 to 4 superhero films of the same universe out in 1 year.
This is the reason why I feel the way that I feel, and I disagree with you in this sense. Is because in order to get unique films, you need to allow directors to direct.
100%.
Okay, and in order to get a studio to make a quote unquote cinematic universe, they need to feel like they have a certain amount of control over everything. So I think that those two things are at odds. I don't think that you actually allow a director to truly have, because, like, for instance, okay, Marvel comic book characters are actually quite diverse. They're diverse in maturity level and tones and styles and everything, right? And when you watch a Marvel film, you always know it's a Marvel film. But the truth is, you should watch a Marvel film and not know it's a Marvel film. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should watch.
I get what you're saying.
You should watch a DC film and not know that it's a DC film until you do. That's how it really ought to be if you're trying to be truthful about it. But the truth is that the cinematic universe forces several things. It needs conformity. It needs quote unquote consistency.
Yes.
It needs you to believe that, and also too, if you're going to make a cinematic universe, you have to basically make every movie a 4-quadrant movie. Even Deadpool. It's funny because I recently posted to my Twitter. Ryan Reynolds was talking about how Deadpool and Wolverine was the first 4-quadrant R-rated movie. So even if you make an R-rated movie, it still has to appeal to all the age and demographics.
Can I ask, though, now, do you think Joker was a 4-quadrant movie?
Look how they treated Joker.
I mean, but it was successful, right? You know what I mean? Like, it made over $1 billion. Now,
well, right, but that it's not it's not a part of a cinematic universe. That movie was clearly no matter.
Right. Okay, I see what you're trying to say. Okay, go ahead. Well, yeah. I guess what I was trying to put out there was, okay, I'm still following you on the first notion. I was just challenging the notion of what Ryan Reynolds said, and then saying does that is the idea of a film has to be 4-quadrant film to be successful actually true? Because is the Joker, the first one, it was successful, was that a 4-quadrant
Right.
film?
So
That's the notion I'm challenging there.
I didn't say that it had to be 4-quadrant to be
Mhm.
successful. I said it
Mhm.
has to be 4-quadrant to be a cinematic universe, because you can't
Mm.
have, like, let's say, 5 different characters that have their own movies in the same universe. One of them is hard R and the other one is PG. I mean, you can, like,
Well,
if you're crazy enough,
yeah.
you could technically do it. But the thing is that it goes against any kind of senses that the studios have. They're never going to do that. They're never going to do that. Now, this is the thing, right?
Mhm.
Deadpool and Wolverine is an exception because it is a 4-quadrant R-rated movie. So it's an R-rated movie that still plays well with the kids. It plays well with the adults through the different ages, right? Because of the kind of humor that it uses, and its kind of cartoonish nature. It's not like having Joker and I'm trying to think of another, like Blue Beetle in the same movie. Like Joaquin Phoenix and like Blue Beetle in the same movie. Like, that's not going to probably
Oh,
happen.
for sure.
Right, but it probably should, though. I mean, if you want to be like, if you really want to be as diverse as possible and get people's interest on
Uh-huh.
every level. But
Uh-huh.
that's the reason why I think the whole cinematic universe thing is bad, because it takes everything at the top end, everything at the bottom end, everything at the left, everything at the right, and it brings it all to the center, so that way.
Okay,
Yes.
right. Okay, no, I'm following you. Look, and here's the thing. I agree with you. I agree. You're right about your analysis there. And honestly, you've always been right about that. Because I want to say, I think you were on the cusp of even kind of like breaking that down before. I think
Oh
I
yeah,
remember
many times.
yeah, many times, yeah. So yeah, you're right about that analysis in hindsight, right? Like, because you're yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to ask out of a studio, but they're the ones also offering it, right? Um,
Anthology. That's how you fix it. Make movies in anthology. You know,
because
they play with the idea of like making everything quote unquote solo movies. What they really need to focus on is the whole DC Black Label thing. Like, but
so okay, hold on, but so all right, hold on.
you're like, whoa, pump the brakes.
Right.
You get a
Well,
little
I
too
guess
excited here.
what I here's the thing. This is why I guess you're right. When it comes to Marvel and DC, that's a tough thing to do, and you're 100% right. And I think though the I think the responsibility there, if that's what a studio is going to do, they have to be aware of what might do better than other things if that's what you're going to do, and then properly adjudicate your finances and resources as so to whatever film you're putting out. Because like unfortunately, we just do live in a time where cinematic universes do exist, right? Even outside of Marvel and DC,
Like, shouldn't
but
there be a
like
Superman?
you're like which one?
should, should there be a Superman? Should there be a cinematic universe?
Yeah,
There is.
right. Exactly. That's the same question here, right? Yo, Carlos, what's up, bro? So, um, but there are movie franchises that are universes, cinematic universes in respect, right? Like technically the Fast and the Furious franchise, that is a cinematic universe, right?
Well, is it cinematic? Is it because of like Shops and Haas, so that because of that it's like cinematic universe? Because like
No, just in general because
it's just a franchise. That's
it,
all.
yeah,
Just
it's
like
well, right, but it's a franchise that we all understand is a universal because the characters never changed, right? Like Fast and Furious isn't what happened with Fast and Furious isn't like the same thing like James Bond. James Bond's a franchise, but we've already had different
it's an
stories, different
anthology.
actors. Yeah, but it's a movie franchise though, right? Also, like people, it's an IP. People know it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like it's
I mean, I know exactly what your intention is. However,
yeah.
I think that the term cinematic universe is just rife with so much baggage and like and foggy ideas
Right.
that.
Notice I'm not saying that James Bond is a cinematic universe, though. That's what I'm trying to point
Well, I
out.
know you said that that's how it's different. You said
Yeah,
that
that James Bond is different as like the reason James Bond is different from what
Fast
let's
and
just
Furious.
say Fast and Furious and why Fast and Furious is a cinematic universe is because they literally it was Dominic Toretto from Fast and Furious all the way to 9, with the exceptions of the spin-offs in between, but each movie still had characters that were carrying on a story that started from the first movie all the way to number 9.
Is Star Wars and Lord of the Rings cinematic universes?
I would say so.
Okay,
I would say so. I mean, although
I'm gonna go hang. I'm gonna jump off the cliff now. Thank you. if
Lord of the Rings isn't, because I'm gonna tell you why Lord of the Rings isn't though. It is, but it isn't. It is to people that don't never read a book in their lives and don't know that they're actually based off books. So that's the only reason why, to me, it's technically not. Like, the movies only exist because the books exist. So it's not that's not a concept that was created on its own. You can argue that for Star Wars, it is because, to my knowledge, its inception started in the movies, then the books and everything that comes, that exists now within that universe came after.
But then why is it that Marvel and DC, which started with books, well, technically, yeah.
This is why I actually conceded that part of the argument to you, is that, yeah, you're right, your analysis is true, because it is a difficult ask to do cinematic universes, because there is the lore that exists prior to. The only reason it's also though different, though, is because Lord of the Rings is one universe. DC and Marvel are multiverse.
So multiverse means cinematic universe.
And it's not that that's what it means, but it's that would probably give credence or reason to say we can do a cinematic universe, because this could be its own part of the overall multiverse of whatever is the overall Marvel DC.
Honestly,
universe.
this is what I believe cinematic universe is.
Mm-hmm.
Cinematic universe is simply an excuse to be able to milk the same franchise.
No, you're right.
That's all that it is.
You're right. No, you're hey, dude, you are 100% right.
I think Lord of the Rings is now a cinematic universe, but it wasn't.
Right. But it wasn't. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah. It is now that, because now you have
Star Wars is now a cinematic universe. Yeah,
that's true. And you're right, though. You're 100% right. Yeah, like cinematic universes in its most honest
did you know that this is just one
it's just
story in a universe that no one knows, even us? We don't even know what's in the universe yet until we make it. Because we're gonna keep doing it forever. It's like it's a universe, boys.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, bro. It's not to say that you're wrong, but at the same time, it's the reason. We have to say we have to also look at it and say, like, it's not always a bad thing, obviously, right? Like, I mean, unless
you're taking too long.
right. No, but like I was going to say something like, let's say, John Wick movies. You know what I'm saying? That's a cinematic universe technically now. And now we have
Ballerina.
Well, not even without that.
And Ballerina was bad.
You saw it already?
Yeah.
Oh man, I haven't seen it. Oh, man.
I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, I didn't want to yuck your yum. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Now you imposed your thoughts on me. No.
I mean, I think that there's things to enjoy in it.
Yeah.
We can have a discussion about it once you've seen it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch it. I am going to watch it and we can talk about it, because that's a universe in itself or a world that's been created that I found pretty interesting. It's obviously very fictional in its own right, with elements of reality. And I thought it was a really cool, again, just I definitely appreciate.
Gunplay is the realist part.
It is right, exactly.
I love it.
And so it offers that, and it's like, man, but yeah, just the little things that mattered, but the fact that it's a story that I like, stories that are constructed from the ground up, what I'm saying, that don't exist,
anywhere else.
Anywhere
original.
Else, original, yeah, and that's an original story. So it's like, all right, cool, I like that. But yeah, all that to say, like, look, the cinematic universe concept, like, it's you're right, it is a cash cow thing, but it's not to say that there aren't great stories that can come out of it. Again, like I personally do like the entirety of what so far is John Wick. I I
but
guess to see
but but,
Ballerina.
but the question is that what great story comes out of something because it's a cinematic universe? Like any great story that can come
No,
out.
you're right. You're right. That's a good question, or that's a fair way to pose that. Like, yeah, like is it the is so yeah the what's the word I'm looking for, the
Could
home.
Ballerina not be its own movie without, like, for instance, being a part of the John Wick cinematic universe? Now,
It actually possibly can, I imagine, but once you start adding characters that exist in another universe, like then it makes it part of that universe. So I
kind,
don't know.
yeah, it's a very. I mean, I'm starting to get tired, and it's a very complex thing to. But like, for instance, yeah, something could be more like deeply woven in, like John Wick, for instance, in Ballerina. I can't talk. I can't speak because I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah,
seen.
yeah.
I
Let
haven't seen
me
John Wick 1 through 3.
let me watch it and then we'll talk about it. Okay, hold on. Let's then. What about how do you feel about, I guess, the Mission Impossible franchise?
I watched the first 3, and I didn't watch any after that.
Really? Oh, okay, okay. Because for
I
me, that's another cinematic universe that now exists. And honestly, it's honestly maybe a term that probably shouldn't exist, but it exists now, and we're using it. But you're
well,
probably right. The
I've
reality is what we're calling cinematic universes for the most part are just franchises, and that's what they are. But
well, to be honest though, I think that you use the term cinematic universe based upon how um easily it is to like merchandise and franchise and like and kind of like sell in a cynical way. Whereas like when you think of something that's kind of like eternal and like the story has a beginning, middle, and end, and it just exists in its own kind of like space, like Lord of the Rings did at one point. Then it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely not it, right?
yeah,
But
no, for
then but
sure.
then like even James Bond is becoming a cinematic universe. They're gonna have a TV show. They have a video game that just came out,
But
right?
see, for me, that still is the wheelhouse of franchise, right? Unless it's like still picking up from like the last James Bond guy we had, then like if that's what it's doing, then yeah, that is now turning into a universe, right? Because now you're sticking to the same guy, the same whatever.
But
Uh,
but that's how all franchises are. It's like they
right.
change
So
every once in
yeah,
a
yeah.
while, you know.
So, but I guess yeah, that's you. You're right. We are in a weird place there. It's hard to even decipher what is and what isn't, and because it's hard to say, because obviously James Bond is James Bond. It's like technically the same characters, just different actors that played him.
It's all about
And it's hard to
expectation.
tell like if those characters are different in any shape, way, or form if they're playing the same guy. Where on the opposite end, when you got something like where you can say DC is a franchise because though yes, many have donned the cape, the cowl and the cape of Batman, and but at least within each of those different Batmans, it's a different story, different things that actually differentiate them from one another. So that isn't a cinematic universe. That is what essentially is a franchise. Um, where again, I guess the cinematic universe it's the idea of if we're going to give it any kind of solid credit is a storyline that's been what it was since the beginning, still continuing somehow.
I think
Um,
a lot of it, I think, has to do as
you
well
know,
with like expectation. For instance, like a lot of
mhm.
people when they talk about cinematic universes, they're gonna ask you, "Oh, will this character appear in the universe?" As though he
Right.
already exists, and they just simply need to add him,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, or it's like, it's like the it's funny because like a franchise where there's a story that's tightly based around these characters, this story, this theme, and when you go into this story, this is like what you're watching it for. But when you go into a cinematic universe, you're going into a franchise for the sake of, I don't know. It's like, I guess it has more to do with like the precedent. For instance, like you don't know if the new James Bond movies are going to be good, but you're hoping that after you watch the first one, you'll be invested in the story, and then you'll carry on to the end. But
Right.
with Marvel, it's kind of like it's not really about whether they're good or not. You have to watch it because it's a Marvel movie, and you need to know how it ties in with everything else.
That's true. Yeah, that's true because I know there's plenty of movies where they're like, they were for sure not the greatest movies that I like, but I only watched it because it was like I need to know how this connects to the next one, and even like now where like some people were like, yeah, you gotta watch Thunderbolts, and I'm like, man, well I didn't watch I haven't watched Captain America: Brave New World. Do I need to in order to watch this one?
Yeah.
And so it's like it's supposedly the difficult. And honestly, that's that. If there's anything that I hate about the cinematic universe, it's that. Is that like if I miss something, I might now miss something in the next movie that I am watching because I failed to watch the previous movie, or now because somehow not even TV shows tie into this. If I miss something in the TV series that they're putting out there, now I'm kind of missing context of something in this film.
Yeah.
I will say that is frustrating within the cinematic universe. That whole idea. And you're probably right, man. We need to bring a death. We need to bring a death to the cinematic universe.
So have you seen Love, Death and Robots or Black Mirror?
I haven't seen Love, Death and Robots. I've been meaning to. I was starting to watch Black Mirror. I fell off though. That's something that I just, and it's not that it was bad in anything. It's just it was something that I was intending to watch while I was watching many other things. That the other things I just put more priority to. So I definitely want to go back and watch it for sure.
I think that the anthology series that we should, because we're already in the habit of making movies like TV shows, where
100%.
every movie is an episode.
Yeah.
So we might as well start bringing the anthology to the cinematic landscape, where it's like you don't know what you're gonna get. Everything's gonna be vastly different, but you have faith in like the creative minds. Like, oh, we're gonna like put this director on this project, and it's only tied into the other projects insofar as it's an anthology. You know, like maybe there's like a theme. Like the theme is this, and all these different like movies share that theme, but they're vastly different in every other way. Like something like that would be interesting.
Do you believe there's movies that do that already?
No. I mean,
No?
maybe. Well, I think the closest you might be able to get to is like A24 kind of makes their movies like an anthology, in that
So that's what go ahead.
A24 is like a franchise in and of itself almost. It's hard to. It's not like anything we've seen before, because it's like, hey, we're gonna take this director. They're up and comer, or they're someone who like you are aware of, and they're unique, they're fresh, and we're gonna throw this like wild idea out there. And because we have a precedent set, you're gonna come to watch us. You're not concerned like, oh, is Michelle Yeoh from Everything Everywhere All at Once gonna show up in like Eddington? Like it's like you're not.
That would be crazy.
You're not thinking about that.
Oh shit. Oh, that's funny.
But and that's good. Like that's great. I think A24 is actually that's the way to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the way to do it. If you have to like franchise something, then you do it that way.
That makes sense. Damn. Okay. So that being said, then, with what James Gunn's about to bring forward, do you feel that then still like then DC's still failing because they're still trying to put together a cinematic universe?
So this
because
is the thing.
That's what they're doing. It's not like they're not shying away from that.
This is what I believe. I believe that DC is so random and so chaotic that it can succeed on accident. Whereas I think that Disney is so methodical and orderly that if they get on a path that's poorly, they will fail surely. And if they get on a path that's good or that's successful for them, they will succeed surely. So I think that this new Superman could easily, I shouldn't say easily, but it could do well on the merit that it comes out at the right time, that the news and the headlines and the articles that come out around that time are proper, that like, I don't know, there's a tiny boom in the economy like around the same time, or they put the right TV spot out, before the movie comes out. Just these factors that you don't really expect that just make things. And then of course the movie is entertaining. It's got a dog that's cute, and there's some funny stuff in there, and he gets to like use his freeze breath. I haven't seen that in a while. Like as long as they do something like that, I think it could possibly be successful.
Okay. But would you still say they shouldn't do a cinematic universe then? Because that's
Well,
what they are doing,
me
right?
saying that the cinematic universe was a mistake is like a principle, you know. I
Okay.
mean, movies obviously can do well being cinematic universes,
Right.
but I'm
Right.
saying that it's a mistake because it destroys artistic
Right.
integrity
Integrity. Yeah.
and
Okay. That makes sense.
ultimately, yeah. So that's just the principle, but we're an unprincipled people.
Right. 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 That's that's for sure true, man. Oh, dude. Okay. Do do you have time or no?
I if you want to like maybe introduce like another topic and then like end it there, I'm good. Like kind of go.
Okay. That's
What?
that's fine. Okay. So I like I said before, this is something I like to have different discussions on very many things, and seeing that we are on the discussion of just principle, philosophy, ideology, culture, whatever, all that. Where do and I guess how we so far with the things that we have discussed, how do we the way we've all been interacting? I'm going to say all, just I'm trying to put just a general blanket on people, how we interact with, I guess, what we have discussed so far as movies and things of that nature, AI and things like that. Um, how do you feel we are dealing with things on a cultural level? I guess maybe politically and socially. I'll say because I feel like they're different, but they kind of intermingle now.
Hmm.
The fabric of that has like somehow it's all the same now.
Yeah.
Um, where do you see? Where do you see? Like, I guess, what is your take on? I guess society with that, how we deal with that now, and um, I guess the engagement and interaction with that
Okay.
apparatus of politics and culture
I
social fabric of things.
I think one of the most significant aspects to like socio-cultural widespread attitudes and behaviors and interactions was COVID.
Mm,
I because people always ask questions about like, oh, like this is like what we're this is what we're feeling, this is what we're thinking, like, this is how we're interacting, this is how like race relations are, this is how this and that are, right? But
hmm
I think that like if you actually go outside, you talk to people, the thing that I've noticed has the most effect on my everyday life is kind of just the fear, the apprehension that people have had after the COVID situation.
hmm
Like, I don't get racial epithets thrown at me when I go outside. I mean, I live in Missouri. I've lived in some very small, very red areas, right?
hmm
And I've never engaged with some of the attitudes that if you were on social media, you would think that that's just how everyone is. Like the way that like movies and Hollywood portrays things, the way that you know
Gotcha.
it's portrayed like top down isn't actually how I've ever experienced it. I used to live in California until I
hmm
was about 9. I moved to New Jersey at about age 10. I lived there for a year, and then I moved to Missouri, and I've lived in different areas, kind of in the greater St. Louis area.
Okay.
And you know, it just a lot of the narratives, it hasn't actually played out.
Mm,
Especially when it comes to like ethnic and stuff, that it hasn't
hmm
played out that way. But what I will say is that the greatest impact that I've actually noticed in everyday life of my friends, my family, like my immediate community, and my neighbors, is just a certain uncertainty, fear, apprehension, not looking you in the eye, not talking to you, just um, even like with behaviors around obviously sickness,
Right.
scares, um, just a certain like paranoia. I would
Mm,
say. I would say that's probably one of the most tangible things that I have actually seen as far as like a socio-cultural thing. And a lot of the other narratives, it's like, I mean, maybe it's happening in select spot. Maybe if you go to California right now, you know,
Right.
you can
Right.
like run into like a rioter or something, but it's like, you know, I'm not sure you can really speak widespread, really, you know, with everything like that.
No, that's about right. I think, you're 100% right. It's like where you're at actually dictates how things are really going for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, or and how things really affect you. And what you see online really is not like an indicator of everyday life to its fullest capacity. And that same thing goes for even movies. Like you said, like the movies can only show you a slight perspective of what life can be or what life has been, but it's not giving you the full picture ever. And and probably shows do a better job at that because they can, because each episode can kind of slightly touch on something different, whatever.
Hmm.
But other to say that the reality is what you actually go through in life outside of this, what we're doing is probably the most honest thing you're gonna get, as far as what's real and what's not. And then obviously that like what is happening wherever you're at is an indicator of what's true. So like obviously, yeah, like whatever's happening in California necessarily isn't the truth about what's gonna, the apparatus in I guess somewhere like where you're at, or me for instance, like in Chicago, um, where I guess, you know, I think what you did point out though, as far as like the paranoia of things, I feel like that's probably been the most truest thing, and meaning that it just seems like the media alongside with politics plays very well into the vulnerabilities of us, right? Like,
Sure.
whether that's our fears, whether it's our paranoia, whether that's our empathy, our concerns, our worries and stuff. And then it's social media just does a really good job of amplifying it, you know, where then it pushes people to it can push people to the extreme of things, you know, which is unfortunate because then that's when bad things happen, So like obviously,
At the same
mhm,
time, it's really hard to, I guess, calculate what degree social media has had an effect in people's taking action. You
mm,
know, it's like saying, "Oh, violent video games makes you violent," or something. You know, I'm trying to say it's.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I would say, in my own life, I can tell that when I am on social media a lot, I get depressed. It depresses me.
Mm,
And um, I wouldn't always say like clinically, but it definitely has a negative draining
yeah,
effect on me.
yeah.
And I can imagine that for many people, they also have that issue. Maybe they're even more sensitive than I am about certain matters, right? That they might even
Mhm,
be affected even more. So, and what kind of effect does that have on a person, from day to day? It's like their motivation, like
right.
how much they want to, if you're not inspired or if you're not like motivated, um, you might not like go for that job that you really wanted, or you might not ask that girl out that you want to ask out, or you
Mm,
might not like live your life. Basically, you
right.
might be more kind of inward.
Yeah.
And if a whole bunch of people are like that, it kind of just grinds things to a standstill. These are kind of some of the social aspects that I was actually trying to hint on when I was talking about how the movies that we're getting now, how they reflect our current moment.
Mm,
Is that people want comfort. They don't want adventure. They don't want like risk taking. They don't want any of that because they realize that like all it takes is someone to eat the wrong bat or something like that.
mm.
That's a joke. I mean, who knows how it actually started, but but they realize that like the entire fabric of their reality can be snatched under their feet in a second, and they blindside them. That it's
Yeah.
like, do I really have time for risk taking,
Interesting.
adventurous things? Do I want to watch a movie that might take me on a journey where I feel uncertain or a little scared, or I'm challenged in this kind of way, to then ultimately end up in the place that I'm going to end up at the end?
So you think so you're saying you think we're in a place of technically escapism, right? Like you think people want to go see movies to escape
Well, yeah, a
the
certain kind of
the
escapism.
status quo, I guess you could say, or like whatever's happening in real life.
I'd say comfort, because
Hmm.
escapism, like, okay,
But the comfort can be escapism, or escapism can be comforting. Is I guess what I'm trying to point out.
well,
But go ahead,
it's
keep going.
it's comfortable to, you know, to kind of huddle up in your covers when it's cold outside.
Hmm.
You're not escaping anything.
Sorry, I'm, I'm just picturing your stomach. It's really go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
Comfort is like people telling you things that you want to believe, or that you already know, right? I think escapism is escaping into another person's life. It's about getting out of the things that you think that you know, and exploring, right? And I don't think a lot of the movies that we're watching, like, while they on the surface appear to have fantastical elements of it, they're not really they're not really opening up any minds or anything like that. I don't really think that
Yeah.
they're, so.
So I guess for me, like, yeah, I think it's when I say the reason I say escapism, because yeah, like escapism could be exactly what you just pointed out, like right, it could be something that just takes you to a whole other world, so which is feels like a sense of exploration. The reason I still think it could be a sense of escapism when you're looking for comfort is because sometimes comfort comes. You're looking for comfort in the how do I say? Oh, I'll put it like this. Sometimes even a lie could be comforting. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oftentimes it is.
You know what I mean? So, we'd rather hear what we want to hear that might not be the truth, but because if we know it'll make us feel better, then we'd rather hear that. And the same thing with, I feel like that's
The beautiful
could
lie.
be, yeah, and it could be even like with the movies, like I want to see something that makes me feel good, but it's definitely not doing what it definitely in it, and because of that, it helps me escape from actually facing the questions that I should be facing, or in the sense, whether it's morality, whether it's ideology, philosophically, whatever the case may be, if I'm not, and I'm not saying you need to be forced to do that. I'm just saying that again, it's like one of those things where like if
Correct. But if society was in a healthier spot, you
Mhm,
wouldn't be forced to do it. And this is exactly why I wanted to bring this up earlier, and why
mhm,
it actually really turned it shows up now, is because I think that there's a lot there's I don't have the numbers for this, but I
mhm,
will say I know a lot of people younger than me who are antisocial. They seem to be depressed. I know
mhm,
people my age that seem to be antisocial and depressed. I know a lot of people older than me who seem to be paranoid. Um, they just seem to be, very. I don't know. It's hard to really put your finger on it, but I
mhm,
100% know after the whole 2020 situation with the lockdowns and everything like that, it
mhm,
really changed a lot of things, and I think that really had a massive effect on the kinds of movies and things that people want to entertain themselves with. It's like, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out to do something that I know is going to affirm me and make me feel good. It's going to tell me it's okay. See, there's a difference between like a movie that like makes you feel good. You can go watch The Other Guys, right? That's a
mhm.
form of escapism, right? But I
Yeah.
think like the reason why people want to watch Superman, and I don't know how much of this is true, but from what I've heard online,
Mhm.
and it's just online, so take it with a grain of salt, is that they want this quote unquote hope. They want
Mhm.
comfort. They want like someone to be there for them. They want like, oh, and even Fantastic Four, the same thing. Like, oh, people, cheering for them, and these little kids, and they're all like, rallying around because they want to be the person that they want everyone to be like affirming of them and be like, oh, it's like we believe you, we trust in you, we're with you, and
Mhm.
Superman's with us, and it's like we're all united, and things like that. It's there's not as much really complexity going on there, and it's or uncertainty, and and for good, I guess for good reason, but it's a
I guess,
cultural thing.
yeah, no, I hear you on that. I'm not so sure how one can gather all that with just the trailers that have come out, but if they have, then great. But I will say this. Have you seen the show Shrinking by chance?
Shrinking.
Yeah.
I heard of it. I remember when it came out, but I'm not sure I actually watched that movie.
Okay. Okay. So it's actually a series on Apple TV, right? And it's really funny first and foremost. But
I'm
there's
sure there's
actually
a movie called Shrinking too. I'm sure there is.
possibly.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, it's a funny show. It's pretty much it has to do with like yeah, or the premise is like this therapist who's going through some things in his own life, whatever, but like he works at a practice, so there's other whatever therapists, whatever. None of that really matters. What I'm trying to get at is that there are some concepts that are introduced in this show, right, that are obviously true to the clinical practice of therapy and things like that, right? Um, and the obvious is true, like where oh man, where was I going with this? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So in the show itself, right, it shows how we do have the nature of like we'd rather run away or not confront that which we should, you know? Um, and the reason I bring it up is because you're making the statement that you think, and from your experience with the people you're talking to, um, that there is a sense of some sort of mental unwellness, right? That you think is the reason people are more inclined to watch something that's comforting. And I'm not even
Yeah,
going to say Superman because I'm not even sure Superman is that, but just in general, films that are comforting,
sure.
and that makes sense. I could
And
see
obviously,
that.
there's like obviously horror is actually having a comeback. So it's not necessarily I would say a there's more factors obviously than just that.
Yeah,
Like
right.
for instance, with horror, a lot of these are very low budget movies,
Hmm.
right? So if you look at the actual numbers, it's like they're not really getting that many numbers to make to be successful, right? So you can,
Hmm.
but when you're talking about movies where people want to go out with their families and their friends, it's it's usually going to be something that I would say your Disney movies, like even the live action remakes,
Hmm.
seem to be doing quite well. They want something that's and a lot of the remakes too because they're familiar. I would say familiarity is also kind of another
That plays
aspect
a part.
of
Yeah.
comfort as well.
Yes.
Um, so it's not like a one dimensional comfort. Like there's a lot of aspects, but comfort is I would say the driving force
I
that
get you.
yeah
I
behind
get what you're
most of
trying to
it.
say. That. Um. So. Hmm.
I mean, it's
Do,
it's a broad brush, but the thing is that I really think that, especially after 2020, it just makes the most sense to me. Like I heard some people tell me that like Man of Steel was and BVS was depressing, and I'm
mhm.
like, okay, so maybe I should believe them. Like maybe they genuinely are depressed. Like because if you're not depressed, then I don't think you're gonna watch that movie and get depressed.
Was that a recent thing, or was that back when it came out?
Well, it was back when it came out, but I've heard more takes like that now, and they're usually contrasting it with why they want other kinds of things, other kinds of movies.
Well, yeah, I find that that's interesting because, like, in my experience, actually, it's been the opposite. That's why I was wondering, like, is that recent or not, or like before? Because in my experience, I got people that maybe weren't fans of it before, like, or because they heard that and they felt that to be true, where like now they rewatched it and it's and they actually appreciate it. They're like, oh, actually, it was a really good movie, whatever. Like it's like a whole different take, and it's
Mm.
like interesting that the perception changed on it. And I don't know if that has something to do with this might have something to do with mental wellness, one, two, also maybe mental maturity, you know. Um,
A lot of my friends and family,
mhm.
Um, well, after I've moved, I've been kind of re-engaging with some friends that I haven't been engaging with in a while. So I have like
Mhm.
a new sample size of people I'm talking to and about movies and whatnot.
Gotcha.
So, I would say that, this new sample size, I have yet to kind of figure out like what it is that they feel and whatnot. But
Mm.
before I moved, I noticed that a lot of my friends they they seem to be more kind of like on the bandwagon of like, why would I want to watch a movie that's like it has a bad ending, or why would I want to watch a movie that's depressing, or why would I want to watch a movie that's like, like where the hero is, grapples with this or that. It's not just Zack Snyder's,
No,
movies
yeah, it's like right.
in
It is
general.
just other in general, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
in general. So it's hard to say. Again, I recognize fully that I'm broad brushing stuff, but I feel as though I've asked myself questions again and again and again on why things the way that they are.
Mhm.
And I can't come to an answer. And I feel like even though it might not be the answer, um, I think that I need to try asking different questions. And that's
Mhm.
why I started asking, okay, maybe it's the audience. Maybe we as a people have changed in some fundamental way
Mhm.
that is causing this as well, or attributing contributing to it, because it's not, again, just the mustache twirly, studio executive. I think that, and I've heard so many people in my everyday life, my own friends and family, kind of play into a lot of the new trends. Like my dad will ask me, "Hey, have you seen this new movie that came out?" Or, "Oh, what do you think about that new trailer came out? It looks kind of cool." I'm like, "Oh, actually, I'm not all about it." And
Mhm.
they go, "Why?" It's like, "Well, I don't know. It's a long story." So,
Yeah.
but not everyone's like that. It's hard to say. I mean, I'm just kind of, it's a feeling more than anything. I usually have like a very articulate way of putting it, but I don't really have an articulate way of putting it. I
Yeah.
know something's changed, people have changed, and the movies seem to reflect that in some kind of way to me.
No, you're right. You're right, and now I see what you were trying to ask before, and I think there's truth to that too, for sure, for sure. Um, but I see, man, that's kind of forcing me to go down like a deeper rabbit hole, and I don't know if we got time for that. At least, 'cause-
Let's can we like maybe like 20 minutes and then call it?
yeah, okay, that's fine. Let's do that. See, because it's interesting because I was kind of talking about this just a little bit yesterday with Carlos, and that's that, you know, clearly, yes, as a society or just human beings, whatever, there's definitely there's been a shift for sure, like in many different things. But like just to stay on top of what you're bringing up here, the idea of quote unquote comfort offered as a prescription to what may be I guess you could say, one of the underlying problems within society, right? And um, but my fear to that is it's not a solution, and it does really nothing in the long run, which is why I prefer not that be the case with more recent films because it changes nothing. It's a false sense of security in the same way that someone who chases a high, you know, feels like he's on top of the world for that moment, and this is me
Hmm.
speaking from personal experience. But the moment I'm down from that high, it's back to reality, and things haven't changed. And that's with anything else too of that same nature. That it makes you feel good for that moment, but it doesn't answer anything. It's not a solution to anything.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't even push you in the direction to find that solution sometimes, you know. Um, and that's where I feel like you're right. That could be a thing, but it's just again another, you know, if there is a
Yeah.
twirly mustache guy, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
just playing with the seams. If they are calculating that that's what they should do, I would say that it would be for the same wrong reasons as. And again, this is somebody who, and this is what I used to do, but you know, that's like the same aspect of like, well, let's just legalize marijuana and let's just legalize, and again, I'm not bashing anybody for doing that kind of stuff. Again, I did, saying for a long time, and sometimes I still want to, I'm saying, because it's like I know that makes me feel good. I can laugh at things, I'll enjoy food, whatever the case may be. Like there's a good experience with that. Again, same thing with like, even alcohol and all that stuff. It can present a good time for sure. And but at the same time, it's just if I can be honest, it's it's like if there's going to be honest conversation about it, it's like these things can make us feel good for sure, and they're a good time in the moment, but does it really add any kind of actual value to making things better?
Yeah.
Permanently. And if we're honest, it doesn't really.
That's the thing about entertainment is that, and art, if you want to even be more reverent about it, because I believe in art. I think art's valuable and good. I think it's a higher thing to strive for. But the issue that we always run into with art is, of course, its intersection with commerce.
Yes, 100%.
That's always going to be the time-tested, age-old, age-old issue.
Sure.
Something that I've been personally doing is I've been writing a book. Now I've been working on this for years, and I don't know to what extent I'm going to publish it. I'll probably do it under a pseudonym. So if you ever figure out that I wrote it, it's because I told you. That's it. Right. But
okay.
But the reason why this is important in my life is because I want to create art. I think the creative outlet allows me to explore. It allows me to be honest. It allows me to be authentic. It allows me to touch on things that need to be touched on, to complain about things that need to be complained about, to elevate the things that need to be elevated. And the thing is, I kind of get the impression, based on just observations and just notions that I have, that people on the individual, case by case, each individual on the whole is less artistic than they used to be. I feel like more people used to engage in some kind of creative endeavor, and now that's less the case. Now, I don't think content creators, I don't think that really counts. Now, listen, I have been a content creator for years, so I'm not bashing anyone, right? Obviously, we're on a podcast right now, and even now, I still create content. It's not like, but the thing is that like real artistic expression versus like reacting to something or posting a podcast or talking about commentating, things like that. For every person to engage in something like that, I think it would be healthy for themselves. And then the outcome of that is that you get beautiful art that maybe while you can't sell it, it's bound to move someone else and be valuable in some kind of way. That's kind of the positive take that I have, and it's hard to make art. It's hard to write. It's hard to draw, to paint, to do any of these sort of things. I've done all sorts of different kinds of artistic endeavors: painting, sculpting, calligraphy, writing poetry throughout the years, and I've explored with all that, and I got away from it mostly because of work. When I was in school and like the period of time between school and I guess when I really jumped into the workforce, got a job at a Fortune 500 company, I was doing a lot of personal things and I felt really fulfilled. And then as I kind of got plugged into the system, I had less energy to do the things that I was passionate about. It wasn't that I was physically tired; it's just I was mentally and spiritually tired. And recently, I've gotten myself into a situation where I'm feeling a lot better mentally and spiritually, and I'm also doing more art. And I think that that probably means something.
For sure, no, for sure. I think you're 100% right on that. I mean, yeah, you know, the I think you're most creative when there's a proper, like, I don't want to say balance. It's not really balance, but when your well being, you're well spiritually, physically, mentally, it definitely promotes more out of you,
Mhm.
rather than uh, keeping you contained. Because I feel like when you're not mentally well or physically well or emotionally well or spiritually well, it there's friction, so to speak, or a conflict within yourself that doesn't
Mhm.
allow you to be as creative as you could be if you were free of those things, or in a better place with those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's why, for me, uh, circling back, that's why I'm asked. That's why I even asked the questions about what do you see like as a society and things of that nature. Because obviously, you know, between between how we're looking at film now, and like you said, how it's being given to us, between even that being true for the music side of things. What kind of music are we actually consuming, and what is it saying, and what is it doing?
Mhm.
And then when you see, even and you can even argue that, or say that's even true for video games as well, like every kind of medium of that facet, um, that does give you art in some form, and it's telling you something in some kind of way, informing you in some kind of way, uh, does do something for you. But then overall, the last factor in all of it that probably matters most is how do you take it, and how do you, I guess, how do you consume it, and what are you doing once you consume? What do you do with it once you consume it, and how does it
Yeah.
uh, alter, or maybe not even alter? Does it even do anything for you in some, and how you're thinking? But then, um, obviously, apart from that, so even to even answer something from a couple minutes before, is that, yeah, it's obvious. I would say that the truth isn't that it wouldn't be that somehow media of any kind of, on any form, on any platform, necessarily is at fault 100% with how people, I guess, conduct themselves, or think about things, or say things, or take action on things. It's part of it for sure. The other part is also just the individual experience, of that person's life, right? So that also, I think, has much to do with, um, how you perceive things, how you say things, how you think about things.
Sure.
Is obviously the individual experience of what you've gone through in life, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's both. What has impacted you the most, outside of the platform of media, on whatever, again, platform it is, whether it is the movies, whether it is music, whether it is legacy media, things of that nature. And then the now new form of communication of social media, and even how we talk now, and how we consume information in this form of way. Um, and then you add that into what you've experienced in real life, and the result
Yeah.
is what you get. That's the fruit of that labor, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not
Um,
I'm not a psychologist, so it's hard to, it's all based on notions. You
mhm.
know, I'm not really sure that what I'm saying has any real value. Can you listen to this and come to any conclusion? I mean, probably not. I'd say at best you might be able to listen to this, and be like, yeah, I kind of also experienced that too, and maybe it might
Mhm.
affirm what you already believe, or maybe it might add to it or fill it in a little bit better. I hope that it does something. If not, I'm having fun, talking about it. Um, but yeah, it's definitely really hard to say. But making changes on an individual level is a good way to overcome any concerns and
Mm. Yeah.
that you might have, and just like I don't know, feelings of kind of just I don't know what you would call it. I mean, pessimism, nihilism, things like that. I mean, when you remember that you can actually like make a change in your own life, it certainly does instill little. It can be inspiring, whether it's just
Mhm.
that's why, like, back in the day, Jordan Peterson, he was doing such a good job with the whole make your bed thing, because it was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, that's a small W at the beginning of the morning, and it kind of just snowballs from there, So,
Yeah.
um, I think spirituality is very important as well, and I think that if you are someone who studies the scriptures, you'll actually see that there's a lot of positive, you know, things in there as well for what's to come, as
Mm.
opposed to, what we see now.
Yeah.
So, it's, um, I think it's also been something that's probably on the wane, as well. And I think it's part of, I get the sense that it's also part of the malaise that we
Mm.
sometimes kind of see as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are positive things. I'm not a pessimist by any means. Some people think I'm cynical or pessimistic. I mean, when I'm talking exclusively about entertainment, yeah, kind of, because if you only look at entertainment, like, there really isn't much. I mean, for me, it's the trend typically is that things are emptier and emptier as time goes on. But and there are some, like, little bumps, some, like, little spikes. But I think on the whole, it just seems like things have gotten worse. But who knows? It's who knows?
No, yeah. No, I gotta agree with you though. I think on the individual, I think if people focus on the individual level, they'd see a lot more. If they focus on themselves individually, you can see things a lot more differently, and you can actually, it goes further than just when you're just focused on things that are external. If you put too much attention to the external, not on things that are internal, which that's physical, your physical life, your mental life, your spiritual life,
Hmm.
um, then yeah, you're going to lose grasp of what's really real quickly, because it doesn't get more real than yourself individually internally. That's the most real you can experience in life. And then, not to say that obviously the external can be real, right? Like the camera's real,
If I throw a
obviously.
brick at you, you'll.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's gonna hurt, obviously. You know what I'm saying?
It's like nothing's really real except for, like, what's inside, dude. It's like, oh, let's test that theory.
Right, right. Nothing's really real. And like a drive-by shooting. Oh shit! You're like, damn, hold on. You're like, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some things are
obviously.
real and then some things are real.
Yeah, yeah, right. There you go. you know. Well, but even when you look at even that, right? Like the way you know it's real is because it affects you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the most real things are, right? And so if you're able to work on you first, then the things that are outside of you that even can impact you some kind of way are more manageable. Like you're just able to deal with it. In a
Also,
different
you
type of
can't
way.
you can't help anyone else until you help yourself first.
Yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, if you're not right, how are you going to make someone else right?
Hmm.
So that's a big key thing, man. Like focus on you first. Do what you got to do to put yourself in a good place. And again, it's not to be selfish because life in itself, if selfishness is the overall goal, then yeah, like that in itself is a form of that in itself can lead to a negative outcome. So it's like it's not about being selfish, but it's about being selfish enough in a sense that you can be properly selfless. You know, you can't be selfless if you have nothing
To give.
to give. Exactly. So if you focus on yourself first, so put yourself in a position to properly be selfless, then great.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because
I think that's a big reason why, honestly, social media is as toxic as it is, because I don't think the human mind was made to be able to reconcile with all of human suffering and
Mm.
possible human suffering and possible outcomes all at once at any given period of time. It's like it's not healthy. Like, and even when you're not in front of your phone, you're constantly thinking about like the things that you do, the things that you think. Like, what would other people, like, what would my followers think if they knew that I thought this thought? Like, I
Mm.
mean, if you go down that rabbit hole, it becomes very, very toxic. It's like you need to touch grass.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. This and that that goes back to that whole social media apparatus thing. Is like, yeah, there's it's stands to be true that this whole experiment of things it's probably not that good for us. But again, it's one of those things like it has offered something good, but we can't be blind to the fact that it has also possibly negatively impacted us in many ways. Because yeah, it stands to be true that we weren't designed to consume so much information from all saying that gives us this false sense of like worth or not worth, but like lack of worth, so to speak, right? Because the bigger the world is, the smaller you are.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a meta reality. Like,
yeah,
yeah, we have
exactly.
reality, and then you have like this other reality that's like a almost theoretical. It's like
Yeah,
because you can't even things that you'll never interact with in your entire life. There's
yeah,
things that you'll know that you won't even talk to someone who's actually seen it.
right.
Like that happen. And the thing is that like, okay, I mean that gets into something that I'm not even sure we could even start getting into, but it's like, and it's kind of like should you be concerned about things that you can't know? Is a great question. No, I think yes. I think obviously when it comes to like spirituality, I think that that's faith and things like that. Yes, but that's
Yeah,
not really the direction that I'm going. I'm talking about like you know, oh, like this is happening in some other land, and it's like, but it's like okay, I have no control over it, and should I like how much like uh, how much input should I put into it, like that kind of thing. I don't know. It's like there's a point where you become so there's so much anxiety, so much like personal uh it brings so much upon you that it's like you would probably be better off just traveling there and like in and interacting with that person like personally
right.
then
I don't know. I know it's yeah.
you know what I'm saying. It's like but you can just like catastrophize about something that you will never actually ever interact with, and that's kind of just crazy because that's never been the case, you know.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right about that. Right? Like there's a line in one of my songs. Trying to remember exactly how it goes. Go figure. My own lyrics, and I don't even remember them fully. But I want to say, okay, the line is, and and I knew when I wrote it, it was might have been controversial, but it's like it's just true, and that's that. But I said something. It was like, when your city is a war zone, who gives a fuck about Putin? Which was the alternate argument to the whole "fuck Putin" like hashtag, or
Mhm.
everybody wants to fly a Ukraine flag, which again, and I'm like, how am I supposed to concern myself with that when I had like my city, like the very
Having
city
an existential crisis going on right at this particular moment. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's like, and I'm supposed to concern myself with that, like that's a lot, so that's too much. I like so like yeah, I honestly don't. I kind of don't give a fuck about that right now. You know what I'm saying? Because I got my own problems here. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah. And
so
that's a completely human. I mean, it's not reasonable. It's not possible. I mean, it's like you know, it's just
mhm.
that's too much to ask of anybody. You know.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so and again, it's not to say that I can't think to myself like it's sad. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's a sad thing. You know what I'm saying? Like war sucks. Like it's people dying, people losing their lives,
Mhm.
children, um, parents, whatever it is. It's not to say that that's not the case. It for sure is sad.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I have to be real, like with myself. It's like there's nothing I can do. Nothing. You know what I'm saying? For me to really put too much time and effort into that when I have actual problems that I really got to deal with here. You know what I'm saying? Like in my own actual world of what's in front of me. The people, my family that I gotta make sure is taken care of and they're doing well, and my community. You know what I'm saying? All that. To that if
Yeah.
did I
That's
even if
that's Superman's problem, really. It's kind of
well
it's
that
like
goes no that I don't know if you're about to say this, but I was thinking this low key as you were saying what you were saying.
yeah.
In the scene that came to my mom or my mom, my head was when Superman is a kid and he's like, the world's too big, mom. And she's like, make it smaller, you know, focus on my voice, whatever,
Hmm.
and again, this is why I love Zack Snyder films. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I can take something like that and it means something,
Yeah.
more than just that scene, But that's the human condition, right? Like
Yes.
it's like when the world is too big, it becomes too much, and so which is funny because we're told that the internet and all this has made the world smaller, and it's like no, it made it too big for like us. We're not supposed to be able. We're not really designed to take on all these problems. Like it's not real.
Yeah, and for
Um,
all intents and purposes, it's not real. It's
yeah,
not like, yeah, I mean, it's such a, it seems callous. It seems like a callous thing to say, but it's not, because it's like
right,
you'll get a sick person if they're constantly thinking about all it. It's just they can't do it.
right.
It's not. Yeah, it's hard to
Yeah.
even articulate. It's just,
No, you're right. It's not possible. It's not
yeah,
possible. Because again, even with things that are even closer to you, some of those things are not even. You can't even do anything about it. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, so it's like if you really keep just taking on more and more and more, like you're gonna become so powerless.
Hmm.
You become so powerless because you can only do so much. Now, again, like you know, and this is and again, it sucks because it's like I'm not. If you have given your life, to certain causes of that nature, then power to you, and if you feel that makes you feel better, then hey, great. But at the same time, then I wonder what have you been sacrificing
The,
that
the Superman issue.
yeah,
Yeah, you can only be in one place at one time. Like, so you choose the greatest issues. It's
yeah,
like, okay, so you're saying this is greater than you have to make a judgment call. You have to make a value
exactly.
assessment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. So, these are all questions that, are worth thinking about, and man, dude, like, and honestly, it's obvious we can keep going, you know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah,
obvious.
I do got to go to bed pretty
But
soon though.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So no, yeah, we got to put a put a pin on this. Um, man, wow, what a great conversation, bro.
I had no doubts.
Yeah, yeah, no, me neither. This is actually what I expected. So thank you for meeting the expectation.
Oh, hey man, it was a pleasure, man. I loved it. It's good to see you too. It's been so long.
No, for sure, dude. I mean, and honestly, like, hey, I didn't know you were actually in the Midwest. Maybe we really need to like make it a thing to try and link up and do something. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like,
are you CSD?
yeah, dude, I'm in Chicago.
Oh yeah, you said that. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm like what 6 hours from St. Louis. So, I actually used to travel there a lot for my last job because one of our hubs was down there. One was in Earth City, and the other one was in um, what was it? Middleton? I forget the name.
Is it Middletown?
Something like that. Yeah,
There is.
because like it's St. Louis, but somehow it's like still different like parts of St. Louis. That
Oh, gotcha. Like yeah, like New York has boroughs.
yeah, and it's the
Um,
same in Chicago too. Like so, it's not like it's like oh I was thrown off by that. No, even Chicago has
yeah,
different towns and villages within Chicago.
yeah.
You know, but like
There's another
Chicago.
word for it, but I forgot. Yeah,
Yeah.
county,
Counties?
counties. Yep.
No, not counties. Counties, because no, maybe no, because I think that counties here, the way it works here, wouldn't fall in line with what we're saying. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I
there
don't
there
know.
is smaller sections.
Yeah, it's divvied up, But yeah, all that to say that thing that we, a couple hours away. Maybe
well, you have my socials.
Yeah, exactly. But I appreciate you, bro. Thank you for coming on here, and thank you for chopping it up with me. Thanks to everyone in the comment section who participated, those who are watching. Your engagement is appreciated. Your viewership is appreciated. Please keep doing so. And if you have anything to say about what we talked about, even after this, and you're watching this after the fact, please leave it in the comment section. What you either agree with us on, what you disagree with us on, or maybe something that we didn't think about. So please do so. With that being said, Mike, is there anything you got coming up, or anything you want to plug in right quick before we head out?
At the Exiles.net for my Twitter page, and also I do have a Substack. My Substack is substack.com/@Millennial Mike. So any of my articles that I write, I usually put up on there. I haven't written anything like super recently, but the last thing that I did was pretty good. I wrote something called Pop Culture Wars. And that was basically kind of talking about like the cultural aspects of like, it's like a retrospective of like, the cinematic universes, Marvel, DC, Warner Brothers, Disney, under the lens of like some cultural, observations that I've made and things like that. And I wrote one other thing too. But yeah, you check that out, in your free time if you can.
Oh, for sure, bro. Appreciate that. And obviously, for anybody who keeps up with my stuff, you know that I just dropped a new single, so please go listen to that, Insecure Love, on all music streaming platforms. And obviously, whether it's X, YouTube, IG, Facebook, Rumble, you can catch the Chop Shop. That being said, we are out of here. Peace out. Much love. God bless. And we...
Lots of karate, I bust you down like Itachi, cause you legitimately Hachi. Straight kamikaze, I'm talking dead bodies as I go straight brawly. Y'all niggas can hardly be me, I'm not part of the sea. I'm part of the sea like Moses. No psychosis or hocus pocus. I put importance to staying focused. Ignore all the BS on my timeline, I throw a lifeline for those thinking I ain't about mine. Hit you upside your head with a tie iron. Can't be your time if it's my time. They said to be patient, I'm patiently waiting. It's driving me crazy, cause lately the odds that I'm facing is basic and basically tragically hating. Anticipating my fall, they want it all for themselves. So I made the call, no need to stall. I go and get them all off of the shelf. I take affirmative action, I'm blasting and laughing of how you're reacting to my satisfaction of cashing injections and Benjis and Wilsons, the life that you always imagined. Brother from the goal, yeah. If you ever see him go, it's Holocaust or Holy Ghost, overcome or overflow, yeah. Either way it's overdose. Watch you walk or comatose, penetrating to your soul, yeah. Tit for tat and toe for toe, pound for pound and blow for blow. You would never see me fold, nah. Claiming that what you don't know, that is how you get exposed. Left for dead with bullet holes.